Pledge of Allegiance.
A recording has started.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'm going to go to the minutes to consider and act upon the minutes of January 3rd, 2022 and January 18th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Is there any discussion or anything on this item?
No.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item number 4, we have some resignations for information purposes only. The Bike and Pedestrian Committee, we have Bruce Prangley, whose resignation date was January 21st, and the Bird Gardens Advisory Committee, Tara Backey and Lisa Callahan. So those residents resigned from their positions. I just want to thank them for their service on those committees and for their time and effort. And I'll open it up for anyone who wants to say anything.
I'd just like to thank them for their time, their effort, and their commitment. Much appreciated.
And I will say the same, a very big thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5, we have some appointments. We have, I need a motion to consider the appointment of Janice Bublis. I'm going to say
Can I make a motion to waive the reading of all the addresses and just maybe?
Just say the names. Just
Yeah.
the names.
Okay.
Janice and Cynthia Samarco for the Affordable Housing Commission. I believe, actually, no, for Cynthia's term that's expired. And I believe Janice is on the call. I see you, Janice. Hi, how are you?
Hi,
It's good to see you.
you as well.
I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
And I'll second it. And I do have something I'd like to discuss.
Sure, go right ahead.
So thank you. And I first and foremost want to thank every candidate that's come before us because I think it's incredible. There's a lot of talent. It's a real service to serve your community in this way on a board and a commission. So in advance of all of this, I want to say thank you to everyone who has stepped up, past, present, and future. It's yeoman's work and not always fun, but I appreciate it. But I have not been shy about my frustration with the process of how those positions are filled. And I really, moving forward, would continue. I would like to advocate to have a more meaningful participation in that process. I've been concerned that the boards are not as representative of the diverse community that lives here. Of course, I'm so happy to see more and more women being nominated to boards and commissions, but I do believe that we have an opportunity to be more representational. And as I said, I would like to be able to participate in a more meaningful way and have not up until this point. And I'm not suggesting there's wrongdoing. I know it's by the book, but I do think that the process has been a frustrating one, as I have said in the past. So for that reason, I will be abstaining from the votes, but do really appreciate everybody that steps in. So it is not about any one person individually, but for me, rather the process. So I wanted to say that in advance so people understood why I was abstaining today. And I do thank you all in advance for your service.
So, thank you for your comments, Nancy. I am following the same process that every other first selectman has ever followed regarding appointments. And as I have mentioned in the past on these meetings, there are an extraordinary amount. We have over 300 people serving on boards and commissions throughout town. It is actually a full-time job in itself just to manage all of it, whose terms are expiring, who's resigning, who's this, who's that. The way I have done it, which is a little bit differently than my predecessors is that I have illustrated this in my newsletter a lot. I have put the links up, how to apply, to engage more members of our community, because in the past it typically was party members just asking or presenting appointments. One party would, when there were Democrat first selectmen, the Republican Party would have a person or people who would watch the appointments carefully, see which ones were up, reach out to their membership, ask if any was interested, and then ask them to fill out the form. And then they would reach out to the first selectman and say, this person applied, we like them to fill a Republican seat, for example. What I have done is I've put it in the newsletter to grab a broader sense of our community, because I want all of members of our community to understand we do have all these open positions on various boards, and hopefully encouraging them to participate in something they're interested in. So I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm trying to be as open and transparent as possible to the broader community. And of course, anytime you've had someone that you've endorsed or wanted, asked or put forth or gave a recommendation after they filled out a form, I believe I've been helpful in that regard. So I'm not sure. We can talk about it, I guess, more offline. We do have a busy agenda today, but we can talk more offline about how you think we can improve the process.
I would welcome that opportunity. So I look forward to the future discussion. And for today, my position does stand, and I appreciate a future discussion. So thank you. And in the interest of time, we can take this through the appropriate format offline. Thank you.
Okay. So I have a motion on the floor and a second. Mr. Flynn, do you have any comments? Okay, Janice, I just want to thank you for stepping up to serve on this commission. I know you have a real interest in this area, and I got to know you over this past year, and you are someone who has a lot of energy, and I think you're going to bring something very valuable to this commission. It is an important one in our town. As we all know, we are working very diligently to increase our affordable housing stock, and the commission is an important and integral part of that process. And so I appreciate you stepping up. It's a busy committee, and I think you're going to enjoy it.
Thank you very much. I actually listened in on the last 3 meetings, so and have done a little bit of research. So I really look forward to being on this board and trying to make a difference. So
well, thank you. Thank you, Janice. And that's commendable that you watched 3 meetings. Good for you.
Thank you. WebEx is wonderful.
It is. It really is. It lets you stay engaged in a more easy way.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Best of luck, and thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice. Just want to finish the vote. And Nancy, you're
And
abstaining?
I'm going to abstain, but Janice, thank you for your willingness to serve. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'll tell Janice, I'm going to tell you and all the other appointees, you're free to stay, but you're also free to leave unless you're interested in the meeting, but you're not tied here after you're finished.
Thank you. I am actually interested. I'll stay for a little bit if that's okay.
Okay, well, good. Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Our next item is an appointment for Anna Christina Velez. She's actually not able to be on because she just started her first day of a new job. So she didn't want to ask for time off, which I get. But Nina's really great. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll second it.
Okay, and I also had a chance to meet Nina. She too has a passion for this area, to be involved in this area. She's talked to me quite a bit about it, and so it's unfortunate. I'm glad she found a new job, but it's unfortunate she can't be with us this afternoon. So if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
And abstention. Okay. And our next appointment is Board of Health. This is a Jason Privilege. He's lives on Andrassy, and he's going to be replacing Dr. Henry Moon, whose term expired. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second it.
And Jason, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Welcome aboard, and I'll say what we all say at these meetings. Thank you so much for stepping up to serve on this very important commission. The Board of Health used to be a bit boring, I would say, before we got hit with a global pandemic. So it's a lively group now and a lot of information flowing through there. So thank you for stepping up. We really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity.
And I would echo that. This is such a critical time, and obviously this board is in the spotlight right now with what's going on, and appreciate anyone willing to step into this fray. So thank you.
I would thank you as well and wish you a most boring time on this board as it returns back to normal, I hope.
Can always use a little more boring.
Oh,
Thank
God,
you all. I
yes.
appreciate that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And abstention. Our next item, we have 3 appointments to the Borough Garden Advisory Committee. We have Jennifer Kennedy, we have Sarah Matthews, and Susan O'Neill. And they are filling various vacancies or resignations. And I just want to welcome all 3 of you. Jennifer, are you on the line? Hi, Jennifer. Sorry, you're on mute, so I didn't hear you. And we have Sarah. I can see Sarah Matthews. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
And we have Sue O'Neill on the line.
Hi there.
Who I just saw in the grocery store before the storm, stocking
Along-
up.
Along with everyone else.
I just want to thank all of you for stepping up to serve on this committee. It's been a bit of a quiet committee over the last several years, and I'm really hoping that we can do some creative things. I know we put some ARPA money toward the gardens, but I really I met with the chairperson when I first came in, and he has a really impressive vision and architectural design for this entire area that could be sort of a destination place. And I look at it almost like, I don't know if any of you have been to the Mayflower Inn in the upper part of Connecticut. It's really beautiful. They have a lovely botanical garden in the back with little signs and historical markings, and it's so beautiful. And I envision our garden like that. I know we're far away from it right now. It doesn't look anything like that. But I think that would be a fun thing for all of you to work on, and I look forward to being part of that in any way I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We all need more beauty and gardens in our life. So thank you for serving on this one and helping with Fairfield to make it more beautiful. So thanks for your willingness to serve.
My pleasure.
Thanks for your service and best of luck.
Thank
Hopefully this is a non-controversial commission.
Oh, there's no
just
such
jinxed
thing
them.
like that, Tom. In Fairfield,
Tom.
everything's
ruined it.
controversial. Okay, well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
Abstain. Okay, our next, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Our
Thank you.
next item is appointment to the Land Acquisition Commission, David Cantor, who is going to be replacing Cassandra Marshall. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
And David, are you on the line?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, David.
Yep.
How are you?
I am good, thank you.
I want to thank you for stepping up to do this. Actually, I remember when the Land Acquisition Commission was first established back when I first got involved in politics, on my first year, I think, on the RTM in '99. And Jill Kelly, the former select woman, was very active on this commission, and town raised a lot of money and bought a lot of property over a period of years. So thank you for stepping up to serve.
Great, it's my pleasure to help.
Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Nancy, you're
And
abstaining?
I'll abstain, and just thank you, David, for stepping in where Cassandra is stepping away. Appreciate it so much.
Great, sure.
And our next is appointment to the Solid Waste and Recycling. Can I get a motion to approve Kirsten Atella for the Solid Waste and Recycling?
So moved.
Seconded.
And Kirsten, are you on the line?
Here.
Hi, Kirsten.
Hi.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see
Um,
you.
Thank you. You have some background in this. I noticed in your application and your form that you filled out online.
Yes,
and,
waste is my business, so.
Well, thank you, because it's nice when people who have some background and interests, step up and fill out the application to serve. It's really great, and we do appreciate you doing that, because this is another one that's important and busy.
Yep. No, I'm happy to do it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well,
Best
thank
of
you.
luck. Yeah, best of luck. This has been a busier commission than usual with everything going around. So
Yep.
appreciate it.
Yep, understood.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Nancy's
Abstention.
abstaining. So we have appointments for information only to the Conservation Commission, which says, excuse me, a lot of movement on it. But we're going to be moving up Mr. Fain from an alternate position to a full position, and he's replacing Jennifer Hahu, who resigned. And Mr. Hood, who's on the line. I know Mr. Fain cannot be, he has a work conflict, but Peter Hood is going to be serving as an alternate. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
These are for information only, or?
Oh, that's right. You're right. Both are. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nance. There's so many. Okay, so I just wanted to welcome Peter. If you can wave, everyone can see who you are.
Thank you so much.
I've known Peter for a very long time. He actually lives on the same road near my dad. God bless his soul. My father's a lively person. And Peter's very active in conservation issues and animal welfare. So I thank you for stepping up, Peter. I know you've wanted to serve on this for some time. And so now we have this opportunity to put you on. So thank you. And there's not going to be a vote because it's just my appointment. So I just wanted to thank you. Now it's ask you if you had any comments or if you want to share something.
I'm very happy. I'm grateful for the support. And I look forward to be a facilitator and consensus builder. I'm anxious to volunteer on behalf of the town. I really enjoy living here. But I appreciate the support very much from everyone. Thanks.
Best of luck.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
So did Brenda's dad beat you into agreeing to do this, or did you do it of your own
Be
volition?
nice. Be
You
nice.
mean, did he lobby him? No.
Yeah, exactly. Come on.
Peter has had an interest in this for many, many years now.
He goes to the gym every day. Once in a while I give him a ride, but I tell you, he could break me in two if he felt like it.
Me too.
He's retired now, so it's good for him to be at that gym and not driving.
He's a gas to live next door to.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he is, Peter. Let's not talk about any of that. Okay, I'm going to shut your microphone off now. Okay. All right, enough kidding around. Thanks, Peter, again, and I hope you enjoy serving on it. Our next item is 7. It's to hear and consider and authorize the purchasing authority to enter into a proposed contract with Allstate Construction to provide labor, materials, equipment, and all else necessary to perform HVAC upgrades to the police headquarters. This is obviously an item that has already been approved, the funding for it, but this is the contract, and it's not to exceed $480,000. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, I believe Gerald's on the line. There he is. Does anyone have any questions for Gerald?
Quickly, can I ask my normal
I was
question?
just,
Yes,
Does-
the town attorney reviewed it.
Yeah, did the town attorney review this? Gerald, or is Mr. Baldwin on?
I am on, Mr. Flynn. This is Town Attorney Jim Baldwin. Yes, I have reviewed it carefully with Gerald and others.
No issues?
I find it to be satisfactory and no issues.
Did this go through the normal bid process, Mr. Foley?
Yes, it did, Mr. Flynn.
Is this within budget for what was approved for this?
Well, what we're doing is we're augmenting the cost of the project by using an operating account. So there was a slight shortfall in the project due to the unexpected need to replace what we refer to as a return fan unit. And so we're using operating funds to supplement it to keep the project going forward.
About how much are we talking about that's coming out
About
of the?
40,000, approximately 40,000.
Wow. Okay. When's this work going to be done?
So what we're doing is there's a, right now there's a supply chain issue with the ordering of the equipment. So the equipment is out about 60 days. So what the company is going to be doing is they're going to do what's called make ready work. So that we're hoping to dovetail this so that when the equipment does arrive, that we'll get it basically in before the summer kicks in.
I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. Maybe it was Nancy. I didn't mean to. Nance, did you have a question?
just to say, when you were asking about the operation shortfall, is that 40K being taken away from something else? Is there something that?
No. So what it is that it's an account that they use for maintenance and repair. And
Okay.
so what we have it set up is I asked the building maintenance department and they said no, that there's no shortfall. There might be some things that are postponed that may have to, this project will go this fiscal year into next fiscal year. So we anticipate there may be some slight shortfall, but not a major shortfall.
And I would just make the comment that, you know, the HVAC is not just about the cool air, it's about the clean air. So I'm
Correct.
very supportive
That's
of
right.
this project and this process. So
Right. So that was, in this particular project, what we're doing is going to be improving the air quality in the police department. Overall, we're going to have an approximately a 30% efficiency. The unit that's being replaced is only 12 years old, but because that building operates 24/7, with the project architects, we're calculating that it really is probably an equivalent unit of about 25 years old. So the units are basically, they're well past their useful life. And so now with the new units, the indoor air quality will be much more improved, and we're going to have overall much more efficient. So we're figuring about 30% more efficient in the current units. Might even be slightly higher.
I know this has been an issue in the police department for years, has it not? The air quality
Yes,
in the air.
yes, it
Yeah.
has.
Terrible. Kind of like it is here in Independence Hall. It's
Yeah.
like an oven in here every day, or it's like an icebox.
Yeah. No, so this unit will drastically improve the air quality at the police department.
Okay.
great.
Thank you.
You're
I have no
welcome. Thank
further
you.
questions.
All right, great. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you,
our
Tom.
next item is a presentation by the Racial Equity and Justice Task Force. We have the co-chair is one of our select women, Nancy Lefkowitz. We have Gina Ledlow, and we also have members Steve Bogan and Doug Bennell, Karen Lynch, and Ryan Odenek. I just want to first thank everyone who served on this committee. I just want to offer a little perspective for those who may not be familiar. On June 11th of 2020, we held a community conversation with local elected officials and residents on Zoom to discuss racial injustice and equity, largely in response to the death of George Floyd and the protests and riots which followed. During that forum, I announced that I would be establishing the task force in the town of Fairfield and appointing Nancy Lefkowitz as one of its co-chairs. In September 2020, the Board of Selectmen approved the mission and establishment of the Racial Equity and Justice Task Force. And I want to thank the members for the time they have spent and their dedication. For the benefit of our public, I just want to read the mission that was part of a 2-page charge. The mission of the Racial Equity and Justice Task Force is to identify any racial and ethnic inequalities and injustices in the town governance and operations, and to provide the Board of Selectmen with proposals and improvements to effectively minimize or eliminate them. Using measurable data, interviews, and any other means deemed appropriate by the Board of Selectmen, the task force will analyze, examine, and document these injustices, past and or present, to promote, support, and identify equitable opportunities and outcomes for all residents of Fairfield. The task force will make formal recommendations for consideration to the Board of Selectmen towards the implementation of town policies and procedures that benefits all residents. The charge goes on to say that the task force will use metrics and quantifiable data to evaluate and analyze town services, policies, practices through the lens of racial equity, and will engage with the community and review town policies. The term of the task force was set forth in the charge and it was to expire on January 31st, today, 2022, or once a plan has been adopted by the appropriate town body, whichever comes first. At that time, it goes on to say the task force will either transition its charge and the execution of its recommendations to other appropriate town of Fairfield departments, or have been replaced by a yet to be constituted task force or steering committee. I've read the blueprint and believe there are department heads who need to take a deeper dive into it and to report back. I also believe there will be questions raised and that will need some answers, just based on my own reading of the blueprint. I think we should therefore continue the task force for a few more months so we can have a full conversation and ask the task force and the authors of the plan some more additional questions, and then allow our department heads to report back to the Board of Selectmen. At this time, I invite co-chair Gina Ledlow and members Steve Brogan, Doug Bunnell, Karen Lynch, and Ryan Ordnak to present to the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
This is Steve. I guess I'll go first. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I lost the beginning of your statement, Brenda, but hello.
Hi.
So I just caught the very beginning and then the end. So if I repeat something, I apologize in advance.
That's okay.
Okay. So we're kind of agreed that we're not going to say thank yous to the members. We did it because we wanted to do it, and we didn't do it for the thank yous. So but I hope, I don't know if we're going to get a chance, but I hope that the members can introduce themselves at the end or during the community if there's an open speak. But on behalf of the task force, thanks for letting us do it. I had fun. I think the blueprint is virtually yours now on behalf of the task force, and it's on time and under budget. The budget was 0, so we're happy that we came up with the blueprint. I heard some of your comments about letting some of the experts chime in, give us a little more time to have them. We have 2 that have chimed in, and I was going to read one at the end and ask for the other to speak, but we can wait. It's up to you. That was Chief Calamaris sent Nancy a nice note, as well as Superintendent Mike Cummings sent Nancy a nice note as well that I was going to share or ask Chief to speak. But that being said, you let me know if we can or should or if you want to just continue it. So by your charge, we started looking at best practices and we started convening conversations, community conversations with stakeholders and community members, as well as people who work or visit the town. There's no secret to the format. It provides a framework to look at Fairfield through a racial equity lens. The secret sauce is in the data. It's ours, and you know, the leadership, Nancy and Gina, asked us task force members to come to the task force with an open mind, just like we would if we were going to jury duty, and to take us where the data takes us. So that was the spirit of how we approached the work of being a member of task force and trying to provide a useful blueprint for a future task force if that's the direction you choose to go. With that being said, I'd like to thank if it's all right, thank the ad hoc members. I checked the attendance, and some of you attended more than some of the task force members. So you guys did a great job. Jamie Forbes, Kathy Wyatt, Katrina Cash, Dan Icabello, Matthew Dancer, Donald Hyman, Andrew McKinnis, and Elif Fatherly. So with that being said, Karen or Doug, I'll let you talk a little bit about the blueprint itself, and then I'll come back at the end.
Thanks, Steve. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So hi, thank you. I'm Karen Lynch. For those of you who don't know me, I've had the honor and privilege of serving, with Steve, with Gina, with Nancy, with Doug, who's going to be presenting as well today, and all of the other members of the task force and the ad hoc members. As you said, we have an amazing community that did, support us every step along the way in the last 15 months of our charge. So it's with that I'll kind of set the stage for what we did and some of the data that we were able to acquire in our time together. So shortly after our inception, and I think I presented much of this kind of next bit when I gave an update to the Board of Selectmen several months ago, but before 2020 even concluded, we had embarked on a primary research initiative to collect qualitative data in the form of a deep listening project. So in that initiative, members of the task force interviewed, I think we got up to 16 formal interviews, one-on-one phone interviews with key stakeholders and leaders in our town and actually in our state. I know one of our members spoke to a state representative. We spoke to at least the chief and a member of the police department. I personally spoke to Mike Cummings of our public school system and a teacher at Ward, Housing Authority and Health Departments, Human Resources, Human and Social Services, Community and Economic Development. We covered all of these sort of pillars to make sure that we were getting a smattering of the people that are doing the great work in our town. The Museum and History Center, talked to the Fairfield Equity Coalition that's been doing some great work prior to our inception, and then also some religious organizations in town who have been pretty active in this space. So these were scheduled one-on-one interviews, formally conducted with a interview guide, and there was a template for recording the data that we walked away with. We had a briefing phone call where we discussed tips for conducting those interviews, since it was, primary research, and individuals, many of them on the task force, hadn't really done this sort of thing before. So we sort of had a training in place at one of our gatherings. We then shared that information, and myself and actually I think Sandra Tallman and members that haven't necessarily stayed with us were very involved in kind of like unpacking what we heard. And we created a presentation of that project, which we shared out previously. I think that one of the next things we did, and Doug will talk momentarily about some of the expert interviews that we started to get, which was people, or expert presentations, I should say, people who have a strong background in certain areas came to talk to us specifically and deliver some of the data that they had collected. So we took a look at that secondary existing data as well. We also hosted a community roundtable discussion, which was, a place where we could not only share out what we were doing, but also then allow people to speak to us. So, just sort of like you did, Brenda, we shared our charge and our mission so people understood it. There was some misunderstanding about what we were actually charged with. So we clarified that. We shared some stories of things that were happening in our town. And by that, I mean, there's been a lot to talk about since our inception. As many of you know, incidents of racism playing out in the news, people finding out about things that are going on in our town, because we are not immune to some of these individual acts of racism. But we also discussed some of the issues that were coming up more in the governance, in the systems, whether it's governance or operations. Nancy, to your point earlier, we talked about some injustices, including, an unfortunate police stop that happened during our purview, where a Black man was pulled over, even though the dispatcher had clearly described the suspect as a white male. And we shared very transparently, not only that type of implicit bias played out within, kind of this police interaction, but also the great transparency that the chief brought us in and helped us to understand what had happened, since the person who was involved in this kind of reached out to the task force, like, hey, can you help me navigate this? Anyway, the chief was so fantastic and transparent and, understanding that sometimes these things happen and we just need to work together for greater good. We also shared that the police department was doing an amazing thing by including members of our task force in on to be the citizens that were participating in the police interviews. I myself went to 3 days of new candidate hire interviews over the last 6 months, just recently as last week and also last summer, where we were able to not only get a question on the set of 6 interview questions that pertains to race, to kind of tease out some answers from individuals that help us ascertain where their kind of work is in this process, but also then have open discussions with the other interviewing officers and really start to take some fresh approaches into the hiring process. So we're so grateful to Chief Calomares and Lieutenant Esposito for including us in that process. And it's been very valuable to be a resource for them during this time and collaborate on things that can be done to make for, a town where every citizen certainly feels that they are equally valued. And anyway, it just really points out something that we'll keep kind of talking about, is that we really want people's experiences in this town to be heard and to be valued. Also, in that roundtable discussion, for instance, we let people speak their stories and tell their truths about what it is like to either be a person of color in this town and some of the experiences that people have had, or be married to a person of color in this town, or be raising children of color in this town, to have a forum to be able to talk and share, to hopefully educate white people in this town as to what it is like to have a different experience. It was probably one of the more validating aspects of our work to be able to hear those stories and those firsthand accounts and let people's voices be heard. It really works to kind of fulfill that mission of, Fairfield being a place where people of all backgrounds and cultures feel safe and feel valued and heard. We also, another sort of set of data is that we started to capture things that happened in our town, different events, whether it was through, again, incidents, but also through processes. We talked a lot about, the achievement gap in our town, for instance, and things that are playing out in our school system where there's a disproportionate number of suspensions, for instance, with our students of color versus our white students, test scores and absenteeism. So there's lots of work that can be done to improve things within our school system. So that's one of the reasons why we're so heartened that Mike Cummings has been fully engaged. And again, Chief Calomares has been truly engaged, because we know that those are 2 individual kind of systems in place in our town that are opened and anxious to do better, because they know that that's really a guiding principle for folks. Let's see, I think another thing that we talked quite a bit about is, little things that played out in our town in terms of the systems we have in place. And Brenda, I know you recently were talking at a meeting about the town seal and how hard it has been to change the town seal or even address that because it's in our charter.
Yes.
It was adopted back in 1935. And
Yes.
it's a perfect example of something your hands are tied right now. You can't, right? Whereas our police chief, he was able to change the patch that the officers put it, this great Penfield Lighthouse, which I think most people that live in this town find that such a beloved symbol of our town and the wonderful space it holds in a lot of our hearts. And yet it's a construct that's in place that's preventing us from discussing changing the seal to one that doesn't feel as divisive, that one that is more reflective of present day Fairfield and not a Fairfield that, had systems in place back in the day that didn't even allow people of color to, own property in our town. So maybe we update our seal, but we can't really do that till the charter's changed. So that's just
it's on the agenda.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's just an example of a system that's in place, something that was put in place at a time when eyes weren't open towards this, and now we know that we can change those things. So kind of with that being said, that's some of the processes that we went through and some of the conversations we had and the data we took a look at. But Doug is going to kind of take the baton from me real quick and talk a little bit more about other data that we looked into and some of those expert presentations and benchmarking. So Doug, I'm going to stop talking for a little bit and let people hear a different voice for a few minutes.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, so hi, I'm Doug Bunnell, and thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to the Board of Selectmen for creating this charge. I think it speaks highly of Fairfield that we are wrestling with these questions and it out in public at this point. So much of this work involved our trying to figure out what questions to ask. Some of the data-driven questions are attractive in their sort of empiricism, but really were hard to really pin down in terms of how are we going to figure out how we're going to actually get quantifiable data. I'll say just as a take-home, sort of bearing the lead a little bit, the key to this, based on our data collection, our review of best practices that I'll get into a bit, is creating systems in town that keep asking questions about racial and equity issues. We don't pretend or purport to have an answer for the Board of Selectmen right now. We have some recommendations about how we can build systems into place in Fairfield to really start to track these sorts of issues, give credibility to voices and citizens who may not have felt free to speak up about their concerns. I think I've been really heartened, and I think we've seen just a flood of support and interest in these issues from various individuals, but certainly organizations in town as well. So if nothing else, I think we have created at least an opportunity for people to come forward and speak about these issues. So in trying to wrestle with this, just to figure out what language we're going to use, what are the terms that people use to zero in on these sorts of issues. The report blueprint does have a glossary of the terms that we approved for use in terms of structuring our analyses. Karen's referred to the listening projects, which really, if you think about it scientifically, is the way you start to generate testable hypotheses. You actually go out and sort of ask questions about what are the actual experiences that we need to zero in on. So I think that was very helpful in just framing up what some of the issues are. But I just want to be sure that as people read the report, that they read the whole report, because there's a lot of detail about really nuts and bolts issues about how we can track issues that are largely invisible to the majority of people in Fairfield, but not invisible to racial and ethnic groups that have really not perhaps been asked questions about their experience. So I hope we can build off that and really continue to engage other organizations in keeping our attention focused on these issues. So how do we evaluate best practices? We had a number of expert presenters come and speak to our group, including Chief Calamaris, Ken Barone, the project manager from the Connecticut Racial Profiling Prohibition Project, gave us a really fascinating update on some research they've been doing on traffic stops in Connecticut, but specifically in Fairfield. We had a special projects coordinator from the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, The Sustainable Fairfield Task Force presented to us on equity issues related to sustainability and climate change. Fairfield Yabantu, a very active group in town, was very helpful in our work. The Stop Asian Hate group, and I believe some of them are on with us today, Amy Guerrero and Rosalie Shu. John Wynn from the Strategic Planning Committee came in to speak with us about their process so we could understand, we actually try to draft off some of their experiences and understand how they produced the product they produced. A really remarkable young woman from the Fairfield Equity Coalition, Lenasia Brewer, spoke with us. And we also had Dr. Stephanie Morrison, who's a professor and a counselor at Fairfield U, come in and speak to our group following the racial incident that most people probably are familiar with. Again, very helpful in, again, helping us find language to describe experiences that most people may not be familiar with living here in Fairfield. So we reviewed various reports and studies from other organizations and communities. We benchmarked best practices for racial equity, looked at survey data, looked at other town charters throughout the state and outside the state, looked at some historical documents, some of which are included in the blueprint. We looked at a number of racial equity and justice plans from other towns, cities, businesses, and schools, both within Connecticut and outside. And then you'll see built through the report a number of references to sort of checklists and principles that seem, these are common themes that showed up from a number of different reports from the National League of Cities, from CCM, from the Kellogg Foundation. And I'm going to review some of them, and you'll hear the recurring themes that I think you'll see are now baked into the report that we've produced. Like these, we think, are the key steps that the ongoing process. We're recommending, obviously, a permanent commission, not just an extension of a temporary one, to really keep the spotlight on these issues. For instance, the National League of Cities speaks about 7 ways that municipal leaders can address racial inequities in their communities. One is building trust, get the facts, listen, lead, change, provide training, and prioritize accountability. You'll hear the detail focus in that. The Connecticut Conference on Municipalities has a very helpful municipal checklist for racial equity of 7 categories of organizational commitment, leadership and governance, racial equity policies and implementation practices. And this, again, is baked into the report and available for the Board of Selectmen to take a look and grade Fairfield at this point. I'm going to highlight, and I'm sure we can talk about this further, the number 1 step in virtually every report we reviewed, every blueprint, every best practices document, was the importance of town leadership making a public commitment to these issues, usually in the form of a proclamation, not just in terms of a temporary task force, but a real definitive statement that these are issues that matter. Many people, many towns have committed to, explicitly calling out systemic or institutional structural racism. Many, it is our recommendation, stress that it's a public health crisis, that it has a negative impact on the well-being of the community. But at a specific level, I'm a clinical psychologist, so this is my thing, but you think about the lived experience and think of children growing up in Fairfield who absorb a sense of being the other or being overly scrutinized or being seen as being suspicious. Those things matter. And even if those things are happening only to a small percentage of people, say 20% of the non-white population of Fairfield, those things leave marks and scars that can last a lifetime. And we heard reports like that in the Deep Listening Project. And from my perspective, if we don't name, well, not mine, let me edit that. From our perspective, the task force, these issues need leadership, and we need to explicitly call out the fact that these issues are alive and affecting people in Fairfield. So, the other key thing to stress is just how important it is to set specific outcome measures. You want key performance indicators, outcome measurements. And I think as we speak about how these sorts of questions get integrated into the day in, day out functioning of town government, so that the goal would be, and this comes out as just a summary of the different best practice documents we reviewed, that you want every town decision to have built into it a question of, does this decision have an impact, a disproportionate or disparate impact on any community? That's a hard thing to mandate. It's almost a cultural thing, but there are things we can do immediately. There are racial equity worksheets, toolkits to be used, and certainly all this informs one of our primary recommendations, that we pull together a permanent commission to remain focused on these issues, and that we recruit and hire and bring into town governance an officer whose primary focus is reviewing these sorts of policies and procedures and protocols across all town departments. You'll see in the report, we really stress that that person has to sit in a seat that has credibility and a direct reporting line to someone in real power in town. It cannot just be in one department. It's got to be a central position. That's certainly our recommendation. So establishing timelines, having clear markers for progress, clear definition of how we're going to evaluate and report progress over time, how are we going to know if something's actually worked or not. Those are all things that we think a permanent commission and a full-time DEIB officer can actually be responsible for overseeing. I'll give you just a brief review, and then I know Steve's going to come back and wrap up a bit, just on what a citywide equity officer or belonging officer would be responsible for, looking across different towns and different reports. There's considerable variation in what these sorts of officers do. Some focus on race, but most focus on race and social justice. They focus on inequities in workforces, administrative policies, hiring and procurement, disparate impacts on different communities, budgeting allocation decisions, and importantly, and this is a little fuzzier, community liaison activities. There's such a wealth of energy and experience and wisdom in this town around these issues. It's just waiting to be pulled together. And I applaud the Board of Selectmen for starting this in motion. It's really important that we continue that work. We haven't really mentioned training. That's a big part of what this officer would oversee as well. Most of the people in these positions across the country seem to report, as I said, to the mayor, in this case, the first select person. So just to wrap up, the consistent theme in virtually every initiative is the importance of town leadership. This can't just be something that people are sort of doing from the ground up. This needs an explicit statement and commitment from the town, an explicit articulation of the issues and why they matter to the entire community. This is not just an issue for the minority of people who aren't white in town. This actually affects the quality of life for everybody. We don't have the capacity, or this task force did not have the capacity to measure empirically things that one of the key issues that is, it's sprinkled throughout the report is how essential it is to set up systems to disaggregate the data we're collecting. Right now, I don't think we have a lot of capacity to say, how did this initiative work out? Did it have a different impact for people who are white versus people who aren't white? And we need that capacity built into our systems. Importantly, we all have to be willing to ask difficult questions and not avoid uncomfortable realities. If we don't ask about these issues, they will remain invisible to the majority, right? For the majority, we have the privilege of not, and I clearly speak as I lived in the majority most of my life here, that we have the privilege to not attend to these issues. There are many people in Fairfield who do not have the opportunity or option to not attend to these issues. They live these issues, and I think they deserve our support. And just because it seems invisible to the majority doesn't mean it's not a real issue for many, many people. We sense that there's a real hunger, not just for leadership and coordination around these issues, but a real interest in collaborating and making progress. There's not a lot of energy around pointing fingers, blaming, sort of accusing people of this or that. There's a real eagerness to try to build something together. And notably, I'll just point out the communications and partnership we've had with the Board of Ed and the police department has really been really gratifying. So progress on these issues requires not only leadership in the moment, but a sustained focus and investment of real resources. So we are recommending really standing up a permanent commission, not just extending a temporary commission. We think the blueprint provides a structure for ongoing engagement with the community, and particularly with parts of the Fairfield community that may not feel like their perspectives matter very much. Judging from the feedback following the publication of this blueprint, we know there are many organizations and many people out there, I think a lot of them are on the call right now, who are eager to share their perspectives. And I'll just conclude by saying we believe that those perspectives will benefit the entire Fairfield community. So again, thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to the next concrete steps. And I think Mr. Bogan's going to wrap up with some final thoughts.
Yes, Brenda, you popped up. I'm going to make it quick, okay?
Yep.
I promise. So the blueprint represents a building block. It's a framework. It's the beginning. It's not the end. It's the end of our charge. Maybe extend it. I'm not sure. But in closing, one of the key pillars, and this is from the Board of Education Superintendent Mike Cummings. Good evening, Nancy. The amount of research, investigation, writing, et cetera, that went into this report is very impressive. It is clear to me that the committee did the work to back their recommendations. It is also clear to me that the theme of the document is inclusive in its intent and that the writers believe in a better Fairfield for all. I can imagine how people are taking sides, but that is not in the document. It's about movement forward. Specific to the education section, we are on the same path. Your recommendations are our recommendations. It is what needs to be done. Take care, Mike. Can't say any better than that. So thanks again, Brenda.
Thank you,
Thanks, Tom.
Steve.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. I think it might be, I can't see everybody because I'd have to scroll, but I think it might be beneficial to hear from all of the task force members, just any information you want to provide or comments you want to share. I'm trying to see who's on here.
I see Ryan. I'm not sure that everyone will want to speak, but I see Sandra. I also have a couple of things I would just like to add to at some point.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'm just scrolling to the next page. I see Gina on.
I don't know that everyone was prepared or wanted to speak, but
no, I'm not okay. Mandating it, but I just thought, it would be helpful if anyone who's on wants to share some perspective. Nancy, do you want to go first? And
well, I may have something to add afterwards, but I'd like to really quickly read that Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." And I think that is the ethos that was at the heart of this work. Doug alluded to some uncomfortable realities. We experienced that as a group. It was not all holding hands and singing Kumbaya into the sunlight. We really did have difficult conversations, which were reflective of the complex nature of the subject at hand. What is clear by not only the attendance on this call, by people watching on Fair TV, by the outpouring of written and expressed support, is that the community is craving for these conversations. The community is craving action. I think we heard from a lot of people throughout our tenure that were frustrated by our inability to act, but we also understood as a task force that we were making ultimately some recommendations which would be up to the next group of people to make to take those actions. And to use the HVAC terminology about useful life, I feel like in our 15 months, this task force has really stretched its useful life. And I would hope that one of the actions the Board of Selectmen take in the immediate future, in the very near future, is to assign a permanent task force to wrestle with some of the very questions that we wrestled with as a group. Because really we were always, as we learned in some ways the hard ways along the way, that this was meant to be a recommending body and it was to launch further discussion. I read that quote in part to talk about the ethos of this board, but to really dig into what Doug and Karen and Steve alluded to, that this is a town that is 85% white, but this document is reflective of the lived experience of some of our BIPOC residents here. They shared their vulnerability, and for that, I know I'm personally grateful. It's been a great honor, not always an easy one, but a great privilege to sit in the co-captain's chair along with Gina to try to present to you and to us, the Board of Selectmen, the most thoughtful, inclusive, data-driven recommendations that we could in our tenure. And I look forward to working with whatever body comes next to continue this conversation. So thank you, Brenda, for entrusting me with this work, and I look forward to the ensuing conversations and the ensuing actions. And thank you really wholeheartedly, with my whole heart, not only to the presenters today, but to all of the members of the task force for challenging us all in ways big and small. We had some really moving and deep and educational conversations, some heartfelt ones, and to the ad hoc members that Steve mentioned, to the community that has reached out in tremendous ways, as I said, as shown here. So thank you, and to any of the other task force members here.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
So I'm not gonna make anybody talk, but I see Ryan, you do the little hand thing. I never saw that before.
Brenda, I'd like to say something too. This is Sandra Tallman. So when
sure.
Whatever order you want to go in is fine with me.
No, go right ahead.
Okay. So unfortunately, Tamisha is having some technical difficulties compiled with some work commitments, so she's not able to attend. She asked if I would speak on her behalf as well. I don't know if that's allowed, but you know, I just wanted to say that she and I initially voted for the blueprint. So after we did that, we both sort of realized that we had a bit of change of heart when we could kind of take a step back and look at the spirit of the blueprint. Since we were denied by the task force the opportunity to rescind our vote, we feel that we would like to have it on record that we don't agree with it. So the threads of systemic racism that are evident throughout the blueprint is what is our biggest problem. We don't agree with that assessment of our town. We don't have quantitative data that shows that our town is systemically racist, and that's the threads through the blueprint that we just don't agree with and don't endorse. I understand that the public proclamation or the public statement is a best practice policy, but I feel, Brenda, that you sort of made a public statement when you started the task force. You stood out there and said, I want to do this. I want you guys to uncover what systems could possibly be in place that we would need to look at. I don't think that we need more than that from our town government. I don't agree with that. I do think that there are some good suggestions in the document, but for me, they sort of get lost beneath the spirit of it. So I just wanted to let it be shown on the record that I do not endorse the blueprint. I would have rescinded my vote if we were allowed by the task force. but the motion for us to be allowed to do that last week, was denied. So Tamisha and I were not allowed to do that. So that is, that's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you, Sandra. Okay, listen, I know, there's some things popping up in the chat, and we're not gonna get into a back and forth. You know, the task force is presenting to us. I asked members to share their opinions, and, listen, there's gonna be differing opinions about everything in life, regardless. And so, Sandra, I mean, if you want to, is there anything you want to expound upon specific issues? I am a little disappointed you weren't allowed to rescind your vote. I think that's appropriate, a thing to do. But do you want to talk
Can I
about?
clarify? This is Karen Lynch. May I clarify one thing?
Sure.
The motion was to rescind approval of the blueprint, and that motion was denied. I just want to be clear about.
That was the only way that we were able to go back to rescind our vote.
Right.
So
I just want to be on the record saying that the motion that was denied was to rescind our approval of the blueprint, and we did not vote to do that. That's it.
The only way we could rescind our vote was to make a motion to rescind approval of the blueprint. That was the only way we were able to rescind our vote.
You're on the record that you want to.
Sorry, excuse me, Madam First Selectwoman, if I may jump in with a clarifying comment.
Yeah.
I would hate the narrative here to be that we didn't allow. We had a 15-month very open process, and I appreciate that there was not that Sandra and Tamisha, it is their right, respectfully, not to agree with the terms. We had an open editing process for almost 2 months, which people worked really hard, and I think it has been an open process for 15 months. So I would hate the narrative to be in the end that we didn't allow for something. In the end, I think the task force members chose not to support the rescinding of that motion because it was disrespectful for the months of editing work that had gone into it. I think in the spirit of collaboration, it's not fair to say that it wasn't a collaborative experience. And so I just don't want that to be the narrative, the story here, because the story is that there are 8 of us who believed that the data, the metrics, they are there, that the lived experience of the BIPOC residents who came forward is data, that Karen used the example of the police patch being not part of a system, but the town seal is a system. We had agreed on language of systemic racism back in February. So I think that the spirit of inclusion was there. Ultimately, this is what makes the world go round. As you said, we can agree to disagree, but to get stuck in procedure here, I think would be a real shame and a loss for the community, because I think at the end of the day, we can all agree, as Sandra just said, that there's a lot of really good work here, and we should be working on what we can do to move forward as a community. And it should be up to the community as a whole to decide where we go with this. And that's why I'm encouraging action on the part of the Board of Selectmen to have it an agenda at a date uncertain in the future to create a permanent task force, because as I said, using HVAC terminology, this task force may have exhausted its useful life, and I think it will be up to a permanent commission, a permanent staff person, if that's the way the community wants to go as a whole, to continue these conversations, to really investigate. So I wanted to say that for the record as well, rather than having a back and forth with the task force, because I think we've done that as a group, and people are welcome to go back to the recordings to hear about our process.
Okay. Sandra, did you want to offer any more comments on that?
I never said that we didn't have qualitative data. I never thought that the lived experience was something that we should ignore. But we don't have the quantitative data. We just don't have it. And, you know, we can pull old police reports. The old report from 2017, which I know is not that long ago, but it was 3 police chiefs ago, and it was our other first selectman. It wasn't Brenda. And I just don't think the way to go forward is by saying that there's systemic racism in Fairfield. I just don't see that.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra. I know Ryan wanted to early, right before that. I don't see Ryan right now.
Yeah, I'm on. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Ryan. I don't know. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Did you want to make some comments as a member?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up with what Nancy was saying in terms of, you know, the task force being ready at this point to deliver the blueprint, and to emphasize how we see the blueprint very much as a roadmap for a permanent commission to take and be able to really hit the ground running with this work, because it includes so much, so many references, so much of looking at best practices and breaking down areas of priority. And we feel like, you know, any group that takes this will really be able to get to work on day one, and it makes it a very, very useful document. It's not like when a commission starts, they're going to be starting from the ground up. You know, they're going to have something very concrete that a lot of time and energy went into. They're going to have the listening sessions, you know, the community dialogue behind them. They're going to have all the people that have come onto our meetings in support of this work and that have come out today. And just glancing across the attendees in this meeting right now, I can see that there are a number of community members who are here specifically to support the blueprint. And you know, and I think that anyone that dives into it is just going to find it an incredibly rich document that is really going to help move, if taken seriously and given the resources, is going to move our town forward. And that, you know, that's just, it's been a pleasure working, a difficult, but also has made me feel good about my town and about where we're headed. And so many people, you know, through the press over the last have come out from every direction saying, I didn't know this was going on. I'm so happy this is going on. How can I get involved? Thank you for being there. I'm glad there's a task force. And I think, you know, those are the indications that you need in terms of, you know, how the work will be supported. And it's time, and taking a very thoughtful way of looking at it is where we are today, and doing the 3 things that were outlined, that Doug outlined, are really very clear next steps. And I hope that will be the focus going forward, not going backwards and trying to redo the things that really were done in a thoughtful way within, again, the confines of a task force with a 0 budget, where it wasn't a multi thousands of dollars of a consulting firm that had been hired to collect extensive and do extensive, you know, whatever. I think we did above and beyond in terms of, you know, what we've delivered. So that's all.
Thank you, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other task force members that are on? I'm trying to scroll. Who would like to be heard or speak on the work that you did? Or any specific items?
Yeah, this is Gina Ludlow. I just
Hi, Gina.
hi.
Oh, can
So
I,
I think-
before you finish, someone did earlier say if everyone could say who they are, because some people maybe are just calling in and they don't know who's speaking or they can't tell. If we could just say who you are. You said who you were, but it just reminded me that I should have asked people earlier.
Thank
So
you.
sorry about that,
So
Gina.
I think when you know, I am so grateful to the members of our task force who came forward and presented the work that they did. When we talk about the data that we collected, we were limited by our resources in that we did not have the ability to create a townwide survey. We did not have access to certain offices. So we had to go with the existing data that we had. And the existing data that we had from the CCM and from the Fairfield Public Schools is that we did find evidence that BIPOC residents are overrepresented in traffic stops with our most available data. We did find that our BIPOC students are underrepresented in high-level classes in our high schools. We found that they were overrepresented in discipline actions. That is quantifiable data. There are numbers behind it. Did we find it in every office? We didn't have the actual ability to do that, to gather that data. We had to go with existing data. That's why we have left this as the first step. The next step would be to have whoever comes behind us have a mechanism to find that quantitative data, to look at it in a way that they can disaggregate the data based upon racial identification. So as it stands as a committee, I think that we have reached the end of what we can do in that we just didn't have the same access. I'm hoping that in considering the next step, we're considering what would happen if we could have that access. And as Karen mentioned before, when we talk about systems in place, I think it's really important to think about the town seal. How I've had a conversation with you. I've heard you say that you also feel that it is divisive. And like you said, the system that stands in place that was created long before you prevents you from making a 21st century decision. Your decision is based on, and I think all of you have the intention that you understand that it's harmful and you want to get rid of it. And you want to make that decision, but a system that was put in place long before you has made it difficult for you. There are other existing systems just like that. And I think the next step is a group that would be able to identify those and that would be able to untie your hands and allow you to make 21st century decisions to represent Fairfield as it is today. And so it's our hope that by supporting the plan, we can work together to have those outcomes. I want to just take a moment again to commend Chief Calamares. We have been working together over the course of this 18 months, and I think it's a really good indication of what can happen when you have diverse voices at the table. He welcomed us into the process. He was not defensive. He allowed us to give our feedback about things, and we were able to come together and present new pathways. And so that is really the spirit with which this document is given. It's just to present new pathways that you can use to make 21st century decisions for a 21st century Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. And the charter's not the only thing that's holding me back from making 21st century decisions. Just so you know. But yeah, the seal is the first thing. I actually just think it's not reflective of the truth of our history in town, and that's why I don't particularly like it.
Yeah, and I agree, Brenda, but
I think the truth would be quite ugly seal.
You can't change it.
No. Yeah, and the charter has a lot of things that, frankly, I think are archaic and slow the wheels of progress. But no, I agree. I think the seal is something, and when I first came in, I want to change it myself and found out I have to have charter revision to change it, which I thought was bizarre, but we're actually doing that. We have a charter revision commission and they have it on their agenda. So I'm excited about that. Some of the things, did any other member want to speak before I jumped in? Any other task force member?
I'll say too, and thank you, Gina. It's important to not to clarify, but to state that where I think we were unanimous is our love for this town. We all came at this from a place of really wanting the best for Fairfield and believing that Fairfield is a great place to live. And yet again, for some, that idyllic experience is not the same. And you know, there are areas where we can improve. And so it was with an eye towards that we came together, and I believe we are unanimous in that. So I just wanted to state for the record that Fairfield is a place we all are united in that. So.
No, thank you. And, you know, some of the things that stuck out at me was the, you know, the money, and I know that came up earlier in the task force. And frankly, I did offer several times to offer to partner with Sacred Heart to have them assist us or even expend the money as the chief elected official for a townwide survey. And, you know, talking about the framework, and I like that you're saying that, because, you know, there's a lot of information in here. And I like that you say it's a beginning and a framework, and that sending it to the next group to sort of hit the ground running to implement. Now, like I said earlier, I've read through it several times. Key members of my administration have read it. I'm just going to be handing it out to my department heads to get their feedback on specific areas, because I'd like to hear that back. And so what I think I'm hearing from all of you is, you think that you need to pass the baton to the next group, because I kind of envisioned extending you for a period of time, you know, to work. But if you feel that we should, you know, start a new group, or maybe some of you want to stay on and some do not, that would be helpful, because then what I could do is have the department heads and obviously Mike Cummings and the Board of Ed and all of them are going to have to review their sections and have conversations. We have I know Chief Calamars and I spoke, he's reviewed it too. And so I don't know how you want to work that. I want to ask you now, because that would be helpful, because obviously it's a lot to digest and there's a lot of stuff we need more answers on. And we don't necessarily have to have all of the members still like intact as a task force to reach back out to anybody or any one of you to say, hey, you know, what did you mean by this? Or kind of where were you going here? Or where, you know, like that, to kind of get that feedback so that we could be more, where our questions could be answered, just say, for example. So what I'm going to ask, what do you think, Nancy, about that?
Yeah, I think certainly I think that it would be appropriate to pass the baton, so to speak, not because there aren't going to be invested and interested parties. I know many of the members of the task force expressed a desire to continue working, perhaps not in this capacity. I think it would be better served in the hands of a permanent commission, fresh eyes, different perspectives. But I do think making sure that it's a permanent commission, certainly I will make myself available, not only in my capacity as a resident and an interested and invested citizen, but certainly in my role as select woman and as the co-chair of the task force, the temporary task force. I don't want to speak for the body, but I know Gina does agree with that. And I've talked to several members separately that we do feel that it would be appropriate for a permanent body to pick up where we left off and really stretch the recommendations and work with the administration to not only to battle test it, but to start implementing and to start going, you know, to reach, as Gina said, to the places that we didn't have access. If any of the task force members feel differently, Gina, if you know, please, but I think that's the general.
Nance, it's Tom. If I might ask a question, where was there not access?
Just by virtue of not, I mean, and I would like the task force members to also be able to answer this.
I
Just
think-
again, by virtue of, yeah, sorry.
If I can clarify, I think when we say about
Yeah.
access, the CCM study was a multi-year study that was undertaken by professionals. The public school data is reported every year. That kind of data that we did have access to that was existing, we're not talking about that anyone denied access. It's that the data doesn't exist. We weren't able to, because if you remember, we were told that we had to be very careful about HR, and we couldn't actually have that kind of access because it was inappropriate. And so I
don't remember that. I don't remember
that was after
That's
the
true.
police commission, and it was it was pretty clear. We were told that it was inappropriate for us to get involved in HR matters. And so in that, to that end, I think that you are correct in that there is someone who is empowered to look at that data that is not and is not going to violate any confidentiality, because that's really where our hands were tied.
Yeah, Gina, I just want to be clear, and thank you. First of all, I haven't said much. I've been listening, and I read the report, and I thank everybody for all their hard work and effort on it. It's obviously an emotional subject. It's obviously has many different facets to it, and I appreciate everything everybody did. I wanted to just be clear. I didn't want it out there that you were denied access, that someone in government would not speak with you or not cooperate with the study. I wanted to make sure that's not what you were saying.
No,
Yeah,
not at all.
Can I clarify?
Like you said, in our deep listening project, we did have access to people. They did share information.
Yeah.
They shared the quantitative information that they had at their fingertips, but they didn't have the same qualitative data. So in terms of what we were able to look at that was actually researched and that was, scientifically proven, that came from different places, but it was just that there wasn't a mechanism for it because we were only a temporary task force.
Yeah. See, what was interesting, it was fascinating reading the document and then listening to the discussion here. There were points that were brought up, but what was really heartening to me, now let me clarify, one incident of racism is way too much. Does racism exist in our society? Most assuredly it does. Does it exist in Fairfield? Most assuredly it does, because we're part of our society. So there's no turning around that, in terms of no underestimating that or saying that's not true. That said, I was heartened by the fact, as I went through the document, that the incidents that were brought up that had to do with town government, and you raised Chief Calamaris a number of times in your discussion points, there was an incident, it was acted upon. There was an incident, it was addressed. Something went on, it was, if not rectified, things put in place that it wasn't going to happen again. I think there was something published back during the Obama administration, or by Michelle Obama, was part of something that said these are a guide or a blueprint that was put up. I think our police department has been working towards that. So I was heartened by the fact that where there were incidents, things have changed and things weren't allowed to fester or sit. I was heartened by the fact that in the school system, that they are actively addressing it. Obviously, again, we've seen some incidents there, but I came out of it reading the report and understanding what was going on, saying we're not perfect, and most assuredly we can do better. But as a town and as a government, we're doing pretty well, and we've got a ways to go, but we're doing pretty well, and I don't want that lost. And if we can do better, I want to know specifically where we can do better. I want to know what policy is causing this issue. I do want empirical data, quantitative data that says, we're not doing this well, we're not doing that well, so that we can act upon that. So that's what I was looking for. But I read the word, somebody said, hey, I read the report and then I think about kind of the spirit of it, And there was a little bit of a disconnect there in that, and I got that. It was like, we need to do this because we're bad at this, but we're actually addressing this, we're addressing that, we're addressing this. And I sat there and said, okay, we've got things to work on, but we're doing pretty well. That's what I took away. Yeah.
This is Doug Bunnell again. I think that's very helpful to point out and remind the whole group about.
Yeah.
I would say too, there are questions we're not asking. So we really can't confidently say that these issues aren't showing up in smaller, not huge headline incidents, but showing up in hiring decisions and recruitment and diversity.
Is that related to government, Doug?
Yeah,
Is that specific to government?
Well, I would think so, in terms of budgeting decisions, citing decisions, blight determinations, health utilization, health outcomes.
So that wasn't, so you guys didn't go into that at all?
We didn't have, I think this is our point, is I don't think we had the, capacity, or I won't say talent. I don't think we had the wherewithal or the resources to get into that granular an analysis of what the town processes are. So really what we're saying is that your opening comment, this is going on in America. It's most likely going on in Fairfield. It would be naive to think that it's not. Can we put systems in place to really, without defensiveness, look at what is going on below the threshold of the headline incidents? We picked up hints of it. We certainly picked up reports from people feeling they didn't know how to tackle
fix, yeah, but to fix it at the governmental level, we actually need those incidents, right? To fix it and when I said society as a whole, I'm talking what's in somebody's heart, what's in somebody's private lives, what they're talking about in their homes, right? We know it exists in some way, shape, or form all over, right? I'm very interested in making sure that it doesn't exist within our governmental policies, period. And I'm very interested in what you just said. Is it in there in the policy itself?
Like explicitly in the language of a policy? Is that what you mean?
Even in the way it's being applied. If you come and say, the stats on how many of this and how many of that, you use blight, how many houses were minority owned, how many houses were, right? That's the stuff that we can address as a government. The stuff that's in somebody's heart that they're talking about in their home, we can't. But we can say, let's make sure that the town of Fairfield's government is doing everything we can to be fair to both our employees in our hiring practices, and as well as to our citizens in the applications of our policies. That's the area.
In the spirit of the blueprint, I think we entirely agree, and that we're looking for permanent commitment or a commission of some permanent commitment to look at this level of impact.
Let me ask another question. Why, in that regard, and I'm not saying I'm for or against, okay, why permanent? Why not just continue we put into the ARPA funds money to hire an outside consultant, right? That was appropriated as part of the ARPA funds, right? Why not continue the work of a committee now to continue to look at that data and go look at those policies and procedures that you guys said you didn't have time to look at?
Well,
why does that need to be permanent?
There are two reasons. Well, there are two reasons. One, when we were actually putting together the mission
Gina,
statement.
can you identify yourself, Gina?
Oh, sorry, this is Gina Ludlow again. When we were putting together the mission statement of the task force 18 months ago, you specifically asked that it would be short term. And that was a specific part of it, that it had an end date.
Yeah, 15 months. That's right.
The mission does not actually empower us to do that. So the new commission would
doesn't empower you to do what, Gina?
It actually doesn't empower us to have any opportunities to look at things like HR. That was a very clear.
Will you keep on bringing up
we can't look at that. And so in order for that to happen, a new mission statement is going to have to be written that actually includes all of that. And so it needs to be.
I disagree with you, but I also think I will acknowledge, though, hang on just a sec. I will acknowledge that there's certain union issues that I'm sure come into play.
Then I don't think we disagree, because that's what I'm saying as well. And so because
you're not going to get around. I
don't disagree with you,
government.
But because that is the case, a temporary committee can't actually do the work that needs to get done.
Neither can a permanent committee on the union.
It can if you empower them to. And so that's
The
point
union
is
would
that
have
the
to agree
current
to it.
mission, the current mission does not allow for us to actually do that level of work.
Does it
so in
allow
order
for
for
you
it
to
to
go and
happen,
look at,
it needs to be-
wait, the current
I
mission
can't
didn't
hear
allow
you
for you
because
to
you're
go?
talking at the same time as me. Can you wait till I'm finished? Thanks. So the current mission does not
Keep on
allow
talking.
us to do that work. I think if you wanted to rewrite the mission, but I think when we had some issues this time last year, it was really made clear that this is temporary and that it needed to stop by today. And so for that reason, we can't go forward.
Well, wait a second, though. I thought that the issue that you're referring to was about being involved, actually involved in the hiring process of, I believe at the time it was in the police department. And we actually have a police commission to do that. So I don't think
Right,
it
but
was.
I think
Hang on, hang on. You asked me to cut off. Hang on. All right. I don't think it had to do with the actual policies. And I don't think it had to do with policies towards the public. I will agree with you. Hiring decisions, absolutely. But that's why we have police commission, fire commission, and we have union contracts that they need to follow the rules. But when it comes to, the blight ordinance, the traffic stops, the this, I would hope you had access to all those available statistics.
We did not. And so again, when in those conversations, we were told that we didn't have access because there are HR rules, and we agreed
Around
that was
blight?
something that we should not be involved in. And so again, you can if you rewrite the mission, then that can change. But according to the
Okay,
mission as it's
I
currently
wanna,
written,
I
that
wanna
wasn't
jump
possible.
in. Can I jump in now a little bit here?
Sure, please.
So what I'm hearing from the task force members is that they provided us with a framework, a blueprint that we can build on. Is that what I'm hearing? Nancy, Gina, Doug?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as I said earlier, I think what would be really helpful now, I did understand that you said you don't want this specific commission to be re-upped even for a couple of months. Did I hear that right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So
I think it's important to state for the record that, having completed the mission and the mandate of this specific task force, it would be now appropriate for a permanent commission or body to be able to stretch it, battle test it, go deeper to the places where we didn't have access, for not because we were denied access, but because of the limits of the work. So I don't. Okay. So I think
if I could just, so I hear I've been listening a lot, and so what I'm thinking is, because obviously this isn't ready to implement. It's a framework. It's a blueprint. And so, as I said earlier, I wanted to have our department heads review pertinent areas that may impact them, and I already had my HR director look at it. And Mr. Flynn isn't wrong. A lot of these issues, I know some people are saying we should, have a more diverse hiring practices, and we don't have affirmative action rules here. And if, for example, you're hiring somebody, that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to hire a person of color. It could be somebody from another department that bumps because there's union rules and all of that. But regardless of any of that, I think that we could take this blueprint, right? And what Gina said to me a couple of months ago, when I think it was when she came in with Doug, that, so I'm hearing two things, and you tell me if I'm wrong. That you guys, Gina said she wants to have a task force or a commission or something like that, where people can come, and because Gina said you guys found that this was a very welcoming place for residents who needed to share their thoughts or their feelings or vent about things that are happening, just a sort of comfortable area. So there's that, right? Which I think is a valuable thing to have. But then on the flip side of it, you kept mentioning we're volunteers and we don't have the expertise, we don't have the funding. So this just popped in my head. I'm just curious to see what you guys think about it. maybe take one or two members of the task force currently who are willing, who, can, to sit in with us. If I bring in, my HR director, if I have a town attorney, and if we actually delve in, if I put in funding for a survey, if I develop or find someone to do a survey, pay for a survey of all of our members of our community, every single household in the town of Fairfield, with questions about these matters, and just kind of help us a little bit. But some of the items, like, for example, we did, as Mr. Flynn said, we did put in $75,000 with the ARPA funds to hire a consultant. I wanted to wait till you were finished, but I do want to do that because I think that would be very helpful. It's like just for example, one of the items that is mentioned in the blueprint is additional training for town employees. Just to be clear, I think I've mentioned this in the past publicly more than once. The town was not engaged in training employees to do anything. Forget about racial diversity. So we have been working on that. My chief of staff has been very good on this, really engaged, working with our HR department. And we have been putting on a host of trainings that are extraordinarily important to the operation of government that should have been in place for years and has not been in place. So we're starting from a very bad, low point. But that is something I want to implement, and that's important. And I think it's an actionable item. But there's a lot. So I think, tell me what you think. Do you think there'd be at least one member who'd be willing to work with some of the professionals in town hall, who are here working, and town attorney and that, and then with this new consultant, once we hire them, to try to look through this and identify some items that we could actually take action on the town side. That are within the legal parameters. And then the police, as Mr. Flynn mentioned, Selectman Flynn, the chief had mentioned that they have been following this blue ribbon sort of document that the Obamas had put out quite a while ago about community policing and such. But what does everyone think about what I just said?
Yeah, I'm sure that between the task force and the very committed ad hoc members, that there will be at least, one person who is willing, and I'm certain that many more would be willing to serve in an unofficial capacity on a permanent task force to dive into some of these issues. I think a survey, it'd be great to use that money that you had talked about for the task force to go towards that permanent group to be able to do things like a survey. I mean, I love the actionable items.
The town can do this. We can do this on our own. But I was hearing from Gina and that a sort of a permanent task force for a place for people to go to, not to actually present or go forward with this, where the town, I'm suggesting a more small sort of in-house with our new racial consultant that we would hire, and one member of the task force who may be interested in still continuing with us, and to drill down and get some actual things done. And then a separate task force like Gina recommended, where it would be more like a place where people could go for the deep listening and the conversations.
I think, can I say something?
Yeah.
I think that.
Identify yourself, Ryan. Ryan
Odenak, I'm on the task force. There's a disconnect in that to me, because I know Gina has mentioned that, and we've talked about that being one aspect, the listening part of a commission, but that I don't believe in any way is the total vision for a commission. And I think when we talk about forming a permanent commission, we're talking about some citizen body that has responsibility for constant oversight and visioning for our community around this issue. And at the beginning of the meeting, we heard there are 300 people working on commissions, on all different topics. And these are people that keep an eye on it. They make it their business, and they work for our town by taking a specific topic, digging in, and keeping their eye on it. And that is part of that might be listening and having a place that could be a depository, for things that happen, concerns that people have, that a commission would be a link to town government to say this is coming up. But I want to go back to a lot of things that Tom was saying, of saying collecting data, and something you said about a survey too, of we could go and collect data and come back. These collection of data needs to be ongoing. It needs to be in a moment, not one moment in town. All departments need to be trained, and they need to take on procedures that allow them to collect this kind of information at all times, so that at the end of every year, 6 month, quarter, they can report back on this, that there was an incident here, this is how we addressed it, and so forth. And also, just like the police department is seeing that the Obama plan, the national plan for improving police, there are so many best practice models out there. And I think having the departments look at those best practices they will find that collecting data, having active training, with their departments it's a starting point. We don't have, having a consultant. I'm so thrilled that there is money, through the grant that came into town that is earmarked for this. But I would hate to see it being spent in the wrong place, redoing something, that really is not necessary. And I think a commission of not one person, but a number of people could be a very effective citizen group to be involved in this on an ongoing and could be a great help to you as the first selectman and to the department heads and to whoever, hopefully eventually a permanent staff member, but certainly a consultant that comes in would need a point person and a citizen group to help manage it. So,
and can I jump in on that specific comment?
Can I just jump in though? This is a little different, Ryan, and I hear your point, but it's a little different than say Park and Rec, or voting on somebody wanting to use a park or a permit, or the Shellfish Commission. It's a little different in that citizens, being engaged. The Conservation Commission votes on inland wetland permits with the advice of the Conservation Department. It's not the same, I don't think. And the way I had heard it from Gina, they wanted a committee to allow people to gather and speak and share their thoughts and opinions, and obviously be engaged in the community. They should be. But I was thinking about bringing this in a little bit with the trained consultant that we have set aside funding for, paying for a survey, taking some of this stuff with the consultant and our HR director and maybe, like I said, somebody from the commission, and digging down on real actionable items. And as to Tom's point, a lot of good things are happening in Fairfield, and I don't want our residents to get the impression that our town government on its face is performing racist activities every day in its interactions with the public, in the building department, in the zoning department, in the tax assessor's office. Do you know what I mean? But there are things here where I think we need to dive down and do some strategic work with a consultant who handles these matters as a professional, and our HR department. And I was just thinking, it would be nice to have one of the members of the task force to be engaged with us on that work.
This is Steve, real quick. Brenda, that's every town in America. Every town in America needs to do the same thing. So it's not like Fairfield is. The one consistent theme is what Nancy said. It's Fairfield is the great town. I've been around 46 years. I've been around Fairfield, and these listening projects are so important. I was interviewing Chief Liddy, and I went to high school with him, but I wouldn't have known if I wasn't interviewing him in a listening project. we need to talk more. Everybody needs an outlet, but not just talk, we need action. So we need somebody, that was our frustration. We were a sounding board, but we couldn't do anything, and we had to make that clear every time we went into any kind of project is we're just gathering information.
Well, listen,
So-
information is helpful and it helps build, like you were saying,
Yes.
a framework and a building block, and it allows us to move to the next phase. So it's
Correct.
not, don't be frustrated. I mean, it's helpful.
Yeah, but it's just we have to keep making it clear that that's what we're there. It's the President's Commission on 21st Century Policing that
Yes.
you guys keep
Yes.
referencing. Yes.
Yes.
That's what we based the section on policing is based on that, and some of the things that Chief Calamares is already doing is that's the thing. Some of our recommendations are already being implemented. So
Correct.
I think you can't be afraid in a community that if you are actually examining things and you are taking active processes, I think you can't be afraid that people are going to perceive, what they're going to perceive about a town. I think when you take active steps, in this area around racial justice and equity, that you're making a huge statement about your values as a town, and that it's not saying it's not making a comment on every single thing. I'm sure there are, we uncovered and outlined things that are being done well. However, just to say that there's not, what you said about training, that's a perfect example. Okay, training's not going on in a lot of levels. The fact that there's no diversity training in this area, in this day and time in a town, it's like, okay, there's a system, that's not working right now, and that could be better. We could be better. When we know better, we should do better. And when we know that diversity training, it makes your employees more sensitive in their jobs, then they should, that should be happening. And it's just really as simple as that. And to call it out is the kind of vulnerability that I think you have to live with to do this kind of work. And you have to be willing to. And
Right. But to Ryan, to just, be clear here, like I mentioned earlier, we were lacking training in just basic things.
Yeah, I understand.
In our town. So, there's a lot of problems. There was a lot of problems when I walked in here 2 years ago. And so we're just trying to fix them, every single day. But I agree with you. These are, like I said, this is really important, and I want to move forward. As I said, I think it's good. Nancy, you have your hand up? You're on mute.
I do. Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the spirit of the recommendations and to look at those first 5, because again, to say that the task force as a group, the proclamation, I think it's amazing that you led with this charge back in June of 2020. I think it does say a lot, but as best practices will show, that making that formal proclamation is the difference. And it is different than sort of saying you are a town committed to it. And so I just wanted to point that out. And I do applaud the work and your willingness to form this group. But best practices does show that it is different when you make a formal proclamation, as the state of Connecticut did in April and 21 municipalities have done in the ensuing months. I would also say that I think the spirit of us recommending a permanent commission was, yes, that place where people could go, a safe space to share their vulnerability, to share their lived experience, where we could continue the difficult conversations. But to me, it would be a missed opportunity if a commission also wasn't a check and balance for that process of that survey that you want to bring closer to the administration, because I think it's really important that we understand who is looking at that survey, who's conducting that survey.
No, I agree. And I think that
in that
the
chat and making
consultant that we're
sure
going to hire in this field would be very beneficial in that area.
Okay, so I just wanted to highlight those comments in the chat because I think those are key points and where a commission could serve as a check and balance to that as a consultant in that space. And again, not for lack of subject matter expertise on our task force. We had teachers and psychologists and clinical social workers and market researchers and experts in so many domains. So it wasn't for lack of subject matter expertise, but it's really would be appropriate for the next step for a group as I said, to take on to be able to look at it. What?
This is a Doug Bunnell. I just want to express a concern and first just to respect that there's an organizational challenge here to figure out how to structure all this, Brenda, and I respect you trying to figure out where and how this would all hang together.
Right.
It's really important as you do that, or as we sort of work to do this, there's a risk that this gets marginalized again as just another sort of side project. And our recommendation is that it really needs to be with a statement from leadership. This is a central cross-department town priority. And I worry that if it's just sort of another extended task force or something like that, it somehow communicates again to the community that it's not really something we're fully committed to. And that would be my worry about just extending it as a temporary sort of body.
Right, and Doug, I hear what you're saying. Listen, this is new. This is new to me. And so again, there's so much in here, and like you said, it's a framework and it's a blueprint. And I'm just saying, I think I need time. I mean, I don't want to just say, oh yeah, we're going to do all this when some of this stuff I might not actually be able to do, and some stuff I will. But I have to get feedback from department heads. I have to, and I really want to hire this consultant, someone who has experience in this subject area. Where I'm just like we hire a town attorney I'm not an attorney. I'm not. So again, I think there's some good information. I think we need more data. I think I need a survey. I want to hire this consultant to come in that I put aside funds for, which I knew I want to do back when we first were getting the ARPA money. And then I want to be able to ask additional questions. And I thought having a smaller, tighter sort of internal working group in my administration with this consultant and one of the task force members, and then like you all recommended, having something that's separate, that's there, and I don't know how that would be formed, right? Just like it took a really long time for Nancy and Gina to sit with the town attorney to write the charge for this task force. And believe me, they spent, Nancy, how many hours? Over many days writing the charge.
A lot of them.
For this. Right. So it's not like, boom, I'm just going to say, go ahead, you guys. And, because you're all kind of giving me different feedback about what you think it should be. So I think I would love for you to write me what you think this next sort of phase of this task force should be, what it should look like, what do you want it to do? And we might agree on some points of it and we might not. But again, it's hard when we're all talking and I'm trying to hear everybody's words. And then I think, listen, the bottom line is we can talk about the going forward task force and what that looks like. But I have a document in my hand. It's a blueprint. You guys worked really hard on it. I want to dissect it. I want to sit down with this person we're going to hire. I want to sit down with my department heads, get their feedback. I want to sit down with the town attorney. I want to dissect all this and see what actionable items we can really do. Some of them are, looking at them, some of them are fairly simple and some of them are a bit more complicated. And some I'm like, geez, how are we going to do that? And I really don't have any idea.
I just will add that, in the document, there's actually 8 different items that we described would be the task that the permanent commission would take on. So it is really spelled out in there what the vision of the committee was. around that commission. So, you can always refer back
What
to
page
that.
is that one? What page is that on again,
Page
Ryan?
14, page 14.
Okay.
I just to clarify, I don't
Okay,
think there's a wide variability in the feedback you're getting today. The feedback is in the document. This is what we think the next steps are.
exactly.
Yeah, and that's very.
Brenda, I do see that Karen Lynch has her hand up. Karen Lynch, I know Brenda, I don't know if you're.
Thank you.
seeing
Yeah,
that.
thank
Sorry,
you
I-
very much,
go ahead.
Nancy. So Karen Lynch. Yeah, a couple things that I want to say. One, I think you noticed this because earlier in our conversation, Brenda, you were saying like there's a lot of actions in here. They are recommendations. They aren't do this demands. So you've read it, digest it. Anybody else can digest it. People in the community can digest it, and they can follow up on which of these are critical. Talk to your department heads, as you said. They're recommendations. So again, we're not making demands. We are saying these are some best practices, many of which we got from the CCM, which is an objective body. Many of them are what other towns are doing. Our research took us to the avenue of benchmarking best practices that existed. And so, in my world of research, we don't invest dollars in a survey when we have information at our disposal to move ahead without spending money unnecessarily. Let's be very clear what you want more data for. That's one thing.
No, I want to hear from our, Karen, what I want to hear is from our actual residents. I want to survey the people who live in our town every day.
It will be
Black,
self-report
brown,
data.
white,
Absolutely.
male, female, whatever. I just think it's really helpful for all of us to kind of get that information.
I think the other thing about the commission that I want to say is that our town has a golf commission, a bike commission, a shellfish commission, and some of those are largely like lifestyle related activities in our town. This commission is a life related activity in our town. Racial equity is important to a large group of people in our town, maybe not the majority, but enough people that it should be taken in into consideration as they are important enough that we have a body in place that navigates this space. So I just wanted to say that.
And I hear you, Karen. And I mentioned that earlier, the Shellfish Commission signs off on permits, and Bike and Ped will, research information and give it to Bill Hurley in engineering about the best way to make a street safer and sidewalks and, that kind of thing. Right. But this is a little bit, you have to admit, it's not like giving advice.
People's lives.
Right. But it's not like saying, the Park and Rec Commission voting to give a permit to a band to play on the Sherman Green. It's way more serious than that. Right. And
it should be honored. It should be honored. Yeah, it should be honored, and you have the opportunity to kind of show our community that you recognize the importance of it and the magnitude of some of the things that are going on in this town, and how important your constituents are, all of them.
And I think, Karen, I think I have demonstrated that.
Yeah.
I put together this task force. I don't know of any other town in the state of Connecticut who did this. Anyone.
I think we have that information. I think somebody has that information.
So, I try.
I also want to shout out to a couple
listen,
of towns that
if
are
I could
here.
just finish, Nance. I mean, I'm just a human being trying my best. Okay. I'm not perfect. I'm just doing the best I can.
Oh, absolutely.
So what I'm trying to do is take the hard work that you guys did.
Yeah.
And figure out how I'm going to implement some of these things in a way that makes sense and that can be done. And I think if you agree, Nancy, to what I was saying earlier, what you guys are saying is you want to, and because we do have another big item and I don't want to, and it's already 6:00. You want to disband. You don't want to even go a couple more months. You want to disband. You're interested in the idea of us getting the consultant, and one of the current task force members would work with us and the town on trying to, after we get some questions and get some information, I can always reach back out to you for, answers on some of this stuff from our department heads. But are you clear on what, I mean, do you feel this way too, or?
I feel this way. I would feel comfortable if we could reach out individually to the group and sort of share this and get everybody to respond individually. But I think it is my feeling and Gina's feeling and the expressed feeling of some members of the task force that that's appropriate, that having completed this mission at this stage, it's the right next step to pass this on. As Karen said, these are our recommendations, that they're not demands or commands, but are recommendations, and that it would be appropriate for all the reasons we've discussed. So that sounds right, but I also just would want to give people an opportunity away from this meeting and maybe at an agenda, whether it's a date certain at the next meeting or just after, to come back with what we've followed up with the group and what those findings are.
And that's fine. And I think I'm just trying to think of, and Attorney Baldwin's on here somewhere now. So with the way the charge is, and we said that the end, I mean, Jim, do they end today, or?
Yeah.
If we don't extend today's, that's it, correct? Is that right?
According to the document, it ends today unless you choose to extend it.
Okay, and so the members are saying to us as a Board of Selectmen that they don't want to be extended at this time, right? So, okay, but they are interested in us looking at establishing another with different charge and different parameters, which you are going to give Nancy. You'll gather that information,
Yes.
and then feed it back to me. And then
Absolutely. Yep.
Can you also work with your members and see who might be interested in working with us and the consultant and all of that?
Yep. And I do want to shout out.
I think that would be very helpful.
Yep.
It's like you said, this is a framework, this is a framework.
It's a framework. It is a framework. And as we've said, it's always meant to launch future discussion, future action. And I do want to shout out again to the many people who have called in who are working on similar actions in Trumbull and Shelton and Stratford, because I know they are here. So, and thank you to them and Wayne Winston and the group that he brought together. So, and I know in the chat, there are a couple of people who've offered their consultant to connect us with people who are consultants. So I don't have access after this chat to that information, but if there's a way to, some of the links that are shared there, if we could copy that down so that we can.
I copied it, Nancy, I copied.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I will get back to you in short order.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. That would be really helpful. Well, I mean, I just want to say, listen, I know this has been a tough time. It's been emotional for all of you. You've learned a lot. You've heard a lot. You've heard things you not necessarily, that are difficult to hear. But listen, I appreciate this as a framework. I think that there are some really good things in here that are going to help. And I do see, Amy saying, an internal working group does not convey transparency. And I just would say, Amy, we have internal working group meetings every single day in town hall. We have budget meetings. We have all kinds of meetings. That doesn't mean that's the final product. That's meetings where you get things done. We have a very big town and there's a lot of things going on, and you can't have public meetings on every single thing. But of course, any actionable items would be transparent and open to the public. I'm just trying to get to the nitty gritty, get through the things, figuring out what's legal, HR issues, union issues, all these different things that, that you need to get that feedback on. But I do want to thank you for all of your hard work and your time and your effort.
I'd like to echo the thanks to everybody, Nancy, and included, for all your work on this. I appreciate it. From my perspective, this most certainly wouldn't be the last step. And thanks for everything you did.
You're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity in the past, the present, and now moving forward for the future.
Thank you, Nancy. So we do have another item. that's coming up. We've been on here for 2 hours. I'm going to use the restroom. If we could just pause for a couple of minutes. Everyone, you too, Nancy? Okay, great.
Thank you for that.
All right,
I'll
thank
move
you.
wait, I think we need to formally move for a 5-minute recess.
Okay, there you go.
So
I'll
I'll
move
make
for
the
a
motion.
5-minute recess. Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you. All right, we'll be right
And
back.
thank you to everyone that tuned in to support this conversation.
Vote to come out of recess.
So
Yeah, I'll
moved.
make the motion to seconded.
Sorry.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And we have our tax collector. It's been sitting there. Hi, Dave. Didn't think you'd be sitting there that long, huh? Okay, so our next item is item number 9. Can I get a motion to act upon the tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount of $55,282.86?
So moved.
And I will second it.
Is there any comments or questions on this item?
None for me, thank you.
None either.
Okay, sorry, Dave. I probably should have took you out of order. I wasn't thinking. I apologize. All right, thank you. All in favor, we did that, right?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, aye.
Okay. All right, so we have our next item, is to, oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to ask if there's any public comment on any of the items we discussed earlier, any of the appointments or on the task force. Okay, seeing none. Our next item is we were going to be voting to go into executive session, but I'm going to do something that is not typical on this agenda item. I am going to ask that Attorney Baldwin speak about the item before we go into executive session. And we do have the other attorneys who have been working on this item with us for quite a long time now. And then I'm going to allow for public comment before we go into executive session. And for those members of our community who aren't familiar with how public comment works in our government, it is typically 2 minutes to share thoughts and ideas. It is not a Q&A. It is not a back and forth. I served on the Board of Ed for 6 years, and I know many people would think that it was, but it's just to share your opinions with the Board of Selectmen. I do want to say before Attorney Baldwin begins is that I know emotions are very high in our community, and I received some emails today that showed there's some misinformation or a lack of information on some residents' behalf. But I do want to note that some of the emails that the Board of Selectmen received today were really aggressive and, in my opinion, inappropriate. So I'm going to say before public comment does begin, after the attorneys speak, that our residents please be civil when speaking to our. I know people can disagree, but we can do that respectfully and civilly, and I'm hoping that the information provided by our town attorney and our other attorneys will shed some light on some matters that people are concerned about. And so I'm going to hand it over to Attorney Baldwin.
Thank you, Brenda. Hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Thank you. So by way of background, it's important to understand that the genesis of this lawsuit, which is being discussed today, actually goes back almost 9 years when a similar organization called the Centers for Discovery applied for and was granted permits in 2012, 2014, and 2017 in residential AAA zones, similar to the permits that were pulled here. The Centers for Discovery, like Newport, provide residential mental health treatment at various locations in Fairfield. In these AAA locations are on Congress Street, Mill Hill Road, and Wellington Drive. These homes are owned by a large corporation and operate as a state licensed MHRLC, or Mental Health Residential Living Center. Although the Centers for Discovery began operations under the state statute 83E, the fact remains that for-profit mental health treatment facilities have been operating in Fairfield for well over 9 years. Newport made a similar application in 2019 to the ones which the Centers for Discovery applied for. And that was issued pursuant to the past policies that were being administered by the previous administrations in the years I mentioned. Building permits were issued in March 2019 based on an erroneous belief that Newport Academy was allowed to operate as a statutory group home with 6 unrelated residents, which is one more than zoning allows. The town's understanding was that Newport Academy sought to operate pursuant to a state statute, 83E, that I mentioned, that allows up to 6 unrelated people to reside together despite it being contrary to our local zoning regulations. When the town learned that the statute 83E did not in fact apply to this these facilities, it told Newport Academy that it would be required to seek a special exception permit to operate its residential treatment centers. This administration views for-profit mental health residential living centers should be subject to zoning regulations that require a special exception permit, and the town maintains that position. Newport Academy, however, claims to be exempt from our zoning regulations. They claim that federal law allows them to avoid public vetting process associated with a TPZ review, while also asserting that the town's refusal to issue a CO, certificate of occupancy, was discriminatory based on the factual history presented. Newport Academy pointed to the long-term operations of the Centers for Discovery as evidence of this discriminatory treatment. Newport Academy then filed suit in federal court, claiming that the town violated federal and state housing discrimination and disability discrimination laws. Newport also filed a complaint with the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, which initiated a formal investigation into the town's alleged discriminatory housing practices, and that investigation is ongoing. The town has been vigorously defending the Newport Academy lawsuit for the past year. And while the town denies any liability to Newport Academy, the fair housing and disability discrimination laws have generated court decisions that are not favorable to municipal defendants, especially under the particular facts presented in this lawsuit. The town has engaged in mediation with a federal magistrate judge starting on December 2nd and concluding after 4 sessions on January 14th of this year. Through this intense mediation effort with the federal court magistrate, Newport provided the town with information that would normally be required as part of the special exception application process when going before the TPZ. And it obtained detailed information from Newport Academy concerning its proposed use of the 2 properties that they own. The town obtained additional information from other sources bearing on the decision to resolve the lawsuit as well. And based on the uncertainty of litigation, in consultation with legal counsel, special legal counsel, the selectmen will be considering a resolution of the litigation that we believe represents the best possible outcome under the circumstances. Based on Newport's disclosures and representations elicited through the mediation process and the town's own analysis, its legal experts, it has concluded that the attorneys have concluded that Newport's proposal, as disclosed and represented meets the requirements of the town's special exception permitting regulations under the lens of the federal law, and that denial would fail, potentially subjecting the town to millions of dollars in punitive damages that are not covered by the town's insurance policy. In this proposed settlement, the town maintains that any such future applications must go through the special exception permitting process, subject to the limitations imposed by federal fair housing and discrimination laws. This is not very different from the 830G situation that the TPZ is often faced with, and which is widely known by people in town. The TPZ has a vetting process, but in that vetting process under 830G, the TPZ has one, if not both hands tied behind its back, in that they are limited as to the basis on which they can deny those applications. In this proposed settlement, HUD's FHA, Fair Housing Act investigation will end, eliminating the town's potential exposure to losing important federal grant monies. And in this settlement, Newport has made the following representations. Newport will operate its group homes consistent with the zoning and land use regulations applicable to other single-family dwellings in the Greenfield Hill neighborhood and AAA neighborhoods. Newport will provide residential treatment services consistent with those described in the Certificate of Need granted by the state, including therapy, counseling, yoga, art, and music. These are not detox centers, as many have been led to believe. Newport will also have protocols in place to ensure compliance with appropriate parking and traffic safety rules in the neighborhoods. And they'll monitor speed and driver safety with GPS cameras installed in company vehicles. Newport will not have an equestrian facility or other disruptive outdoor activity equipment, outdoor speakers or related forms of noise amplification equipment, external lighting components other than typical of a walkway and driveway illumination, and no external signage. Newport will employ trained personnel and implement structured supervision to ensure the safety and accountability of residents, and shall have protocols in place to address any unapproved departures from the facilities. They will have physical security measures in place, such as a security system and door and window alarms. Newport's CEO, Mr. Joseph Procopio, is interested in maintaining an open dialogue with Newport's Fairfield neighbors and welcomes the opportunity to meet in person with any neighbors interested in learning more about Newport's planned operations and discussing any screening or similar privacy concerns that they may have. Newport will provide any interested neighbor with contact information for a Newport representative, and they will endeavor to resolve neighborhood concerns, including those concerning privacy, in a timely manner. Before I send this over to our special counsel, I also want to mention that the well-intentioned proposed legislation that was proposed by members of our state delegation would have had no impact on this litigation whatsoever. Now, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Attorney James Tallberg for his comments and observations. Jim?
Yeah, good evening, Attorney Baldwin. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Very well. Thank you. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm somewhat limited in what I can say on the record, given the fact that there is a pending federal civil rights case before us, but I would like to say a few words, and I'll try to keep it simple. First, I want to reiterate on behalf of the town, my client, and First Selectwoman Kupchik, that we deny any liability in this case. The proposed settlement that will be reviewed in executive session, like any settlement of a pending piece of litigation, is a proposed compromise of a disputed claim with no admission of liability. For those of you who don't know me, again, it's James Tallberg. I'm the managing partner of Karsten and Tallberg. We are a 5-lawyer firm that specializes in public entity defense around the state of Connecticut. That's pretty much all we do. I personally have appeared in 300 federal cases, almost all of those federal civil rights cases. I've tried 20 of those to verdict. And so this is what we do. And what we have done over the past year is focused on the written discovery. There has been extensive thousands of pages exchanged between the parties, and we've brought our own judgment to bear upon the issues. And based upon that discovery in our independent research and in consultation with our co-counsel, who may speak after me, Doug Vargas from Lucas and Varga, it's our recommendation that the magistrate judge's recommendation to settle this case be accepted. And there are two principal reasons I would offer. First, if this case is tried to a jury, the hostility that's been presented from the opponents of this proposal will be imputed to the town. That's the lens through which these fair housing claims are decided. And as mentioned, the case law is decidedly against municipalities and in favor of facilities similar to this. So, in conclusion, significant time, energy, and resources have been devoted to defending against this civil rights lawsuit. But if the settlement is not approved, it's likely that we'll be back here again after years of litigation with these plaintiffs being able to obtain the certificates of occupancy that they have been seeking. If the settlement is approved, as we recommend, this dispute can be fully and finally resolved expeditiously and with certainty. And for these reasons and many more, in my view, it's not even a close call. I strongly recommend that the Board of Selectmen approve the settlement and provide consent for the town's insurer to finalize the details of this settlement, as will be discussed in executive session. And once the settlement is fully approved, there will be a written document outlining all the terms that will be publicly available. And that's all I had, Attorney Baldwin.
Thank you, Jim. Attorney Varga, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, if I may, just a few comments. My name is Doug Varga. My partner, Scott Lucas, and I practice in Southport. We've been involved in assisting Attorney Baldwin, the town attorney, with this dispute with Newport Academy since prior to the filing of the lawsuit in January of 2021. I will echo the prior comments from both Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Tallberg that no one on this side believes that the town of Fairfield engaged in any wrongful or discriminatory conduct. However, you go to court with the facts and the law that you have, not the facts and the law that you wish you had, to paraphrase a former Secretary of Defense. The town and the Board of Selectmen has been dealt a hand and has to play the cards that they've been dealt. And this Board of Selectmen has spent a considerable amount of time asking questions and getting information in order to make a well-informed decision. And I think that they're well prepared to do that this evening. I can assure everyone who's in attendance here that the Board of Selectmen, I think, is fully capable and well-informed to do what they need to do tonight. So I thank you for the chance.
Thank you, Madam First Selectman. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Attorney Baldwin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up. I think the best way to do this is if you would put your name in the chat. It's over on my right, should be your right as well. Okay, let me go in there. Okay, as I said earlier, public comment is, I'm going to set the timer on my phone, 2 minutes each. And it's, again, it's not a Q&A. it's to share thoughts or ideas or comments. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm sorry. Tom McManus is first.
Good evening, everyone. Tom McManus here, Fairfield resident. There are 3 points that I'd like to focus on: transparency, due process, and procedures. Okay. So it is unfortunate that you received emails that were not civil. That is possibly related to this lack of transparency that was, in all likelihood, required to some degree as you were working through the settlement terms. But considering that this has been 2.5 years ongoing, there is a lot of concern over this issue that has held throughout the community. So the lack of information has been frustrating. So transparency, I wouldn't say that having about 24 hours notice in this vote to occur tonight is very transparent. All right, so that, I believe, is the first topic. The second thing is due process, okay? All 3 members of the board committed to not issuing a CO until the judge made his final ruling in the ongoing appeal for zoning that is currently in motion. So I'm curious to know why all 3 individuals have changed their position possibly, or considering changing their position. Along with due process, I'm wondering why the entity is not, why Newport is not being sent through the standard change of use application process, so that the full community has the ability to weigh in and review the representations that Newport Academy has made, when we know from experience that they have misrepresented themselves at day 1 to zoning in Fairfield by misrepresenting themselves as a group home when they have been proven not to be. The third and final issue that I would like to talk about are procedures. Okay, procedures did not exist, and in my opinion, still are.
Okay, Mr. McManus, the 2 minutes is up. Gonna go to our next speaker is Megan McCloak. Megan, you're on mute, Megan. Sorry.
Can you hope that didn't count towards my 2 minutes?
No.
It's Megan McCloak, and I do like to speak fast, so I will pick up where Tom left off.
Okay.
Members of the community might not be entirely aware of all of the background, although Attorney Baldwin did a great job of summarizing most of the basics. But the matter of the fact is really quite simple, and we're talking about settling a situation that has to deal with a violation of a process in the town of Fairfield. It's been well upheld, it's respected, and it serves a very important purpose for everybody who lives here and everybody who has businesses here. There's a process in place that requires an application for it, and we as a town have to uphold the fact that people are expected to be truthful and representative of what they do. And it's an undisputed fact that Newport Academy made fraudulent misrepresentations on multiple applications that are now the subject of a settlement that is not going to require a public discourse process. And I, as a resident, as also one of the community leaders involved in this issue, have tremendous concern about the fact that the answer is that this won't happen again because it will require a special exception permit, but we're not going to apply that here. And the reason why I find that to be such a problem is because the special exception permit process allows for due process. It allows for people to opine on the fact that they have information that has come through lots of different variables that have been helpful in a certificate of need process, a certificate of need appeal that has gone through, a legislative application that was supported by our state delegation. There have been multiple opportunities for this specific applicant, Newport Academy, to stick with their pitch line, and they haven't. And the fact that they have changed their designation on what they're going to be, they have said they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and they don't stick with the story is reason enough, I believe, for there to be a full vetting process. And I think that the major lack of transparency that's frustrating to so many community members is that this is being treated as a unique situation, but it was also presented as a unique situation by a purposeful misrepresentation of an applicant that we are now apparently welcoming into town without any vetting process. And I don't understand how we're going to continue as a town with policies and procedures in place if this is how we're going to take a special exception just because we're worried about punitive damages, as Attorney Baldwin mentioned, that don't really have very specific facts that make the risk exposure so serious in court.
So Megan, I just want to tell you that your time is coming. I don't want to cut you off, so I just want to give you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. The matter of the fact is that I think there's just really serious concern about the fact that this is being treated as a unique situation without following the same policies and procedures that any other applicant would be expected to do. And it just looks like the town of Fairfield isn't going to take these types of situations seriously in the future. And that's concerning, I think, for anybody who lives here. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Megan. Sorry. Next is Nick Von der Wentz.
Nick Von der Wentz, yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Nick.
That's okay. Can you hear me okay, Select Woman,
Yes.
everyone else?
Absolutely, yes.
So I appreciate the time or the opportunity to have a chance. I think it's unfortunate that I may be the only one besides Megan and Tom who are on the phone to represent just the community. I live directly across the street from 2450 Reading Road. I am just a normal citizen, a resident at 2550 Reading Road. My driveway is actually directly opposite the location in question and would be affected, obviously, by your decisions upcoming. And I just quickly wanted to say that as a layperson and not someone who has the opportunity to review the legal documents in question, I just find it incredibly hard to believe that purchasing a home in Fairfield, in Greenfield Hill, and really anywhere in the United States in a residential area can then be undermined or subterfuged by a private equity firm. I'm sure everybody can share this disappointment. And I have spent my life both in social impact programs and in the corporate world. So I have a fairly decent understanding of how these things can be perverted. But I just feel as if we settle, we are essentially giving up our right as a town to object to powerful entities like private equity and having, a way to disrupt our way of life in the town. I completely appreciate the mental health perspective and how the system may be perverted to, represent that we're not offering mental health services to our citizens. But I can just tell you there are numerous other avenues that are available through the town and through private corporations to serve the mental health population. We do not need to settle a lawsuit like this to substantiate that type of action. So just without going on and on, I just wanted to bring my layperson's perspective. I'm also just frankly worried about my 9 and 11-year-olds who have to stand out at the end of that driveway every day. And, I have a very real concern about the type of, interaction they may or may not have. And maybe I'll be, I'm sure it's a nice gesture of the Newport Academy to offer this chance to listen to our concerns, but I just don't think they should even have a permit in the town, and the process should have worked. So the last thing I'd like to say, just to support what Megan and Tom has said, is, we'd really appreciate the opportunity as a community and citizens to have more transparency before a decision is reached. So I would ask for that. And thank you, Select Woman Brenda. I did listen to the entire meeting, including the previous committee, and it was pretty inspiring. And I hope you have the courage to carry through all of the things that you guys talked about.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna cancel that one. Okay, thank you. The next is Tim Lynch.
Yes, hi, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the legal team that is put together for this. I know that you've worked countless hours, well, not countless, I'm sure they were all billable, but several tireless hours on this. I'm not going to speak to the other points that have already been made, but I do hope that since the conclusion seems to be a recommendation for settling, that we do take this as an expensive lesson learned to look at the other processes that are in town that might be in violation of those federal changes. Things at the federal level may change and trickle down to us. And we take this lesson learned to look at what other things might need to be updated to avoid a situation like this from repeating itself. That's it.
Thanks, Tim. Okay. Our next is James White.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm having trouble with my camera.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. So unfortunately, that camera won't turn on, but if you can hear me, that will serve enough purpose. From my perspective, I would just like for some clarity around whether the not following this special exemption process has ever been done before. Is this the first time that the town is seemingly taking these absolutely extraordinary measures and creating a precedent to not follow the terms with which we conduct normal TPZ and ZBA business with regards to an MHRLC? Because I think it's very clear that this is an MHRLC based on the certificate of need filing, and so I'm really interested in getting on the record that the town has decided to for the first time, it seems like, follow this type of approach, because it seems so out of the ordinary and worrying, quite frankly. So I would like to sort of go on record to hear from someone if that was the case, or raise that as something that should be raised. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I see Megan wrote Justin Spencer is asking to speak, but is having a computer issue. Is he? I know Dave Kelly, our IT director, is on. I don't know where Justin Spencer is.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes. Is that you?
There we go. Yes, having
Okay, there you go.
Perfect. I'll try to keep this brief. Definitely echo a lot of what Megan and James just mentioned, but I think I take this opportunity to, I think, focus on what's going to happen in the future. So over the past 2.5 years as being, a leader in town on this, have spent several hours talking to other communities where this company has come in and has, established homes from California to Virginia. And we see time and time again that it's not good for the community based on everything from police calls to other side of traffic. So while I appreciate the CEO saying we're going to put all these measures in place, the fact is that it hasn't happened. Basically, all the data shows that when they have done this, have been nothing but trouble for the community, from police to neighbors to it just seems like it's profits over care. If you even look at reviews that they have from employees and how they treat their employees, it just doesn't seem like I can go into the whole legal thing, but that's not my expertise at all. But I would definitely take a hard look at what is going to happen to the community over the next year, 2, 3, 5 years. If the town does decide to move forward in this direction, because I don't think that we've properly weighed out the positive or negative outcomes of our community. So I understand that there's a lot on the plate that we're dealing with, but I just want to make sure that everyone's looking at the long-term impacts of the community, specifically with with Newport Academy coming to Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is GT.
That's Greg Taylor. How are you?
Oh, hi, Greg.
So I just have a specific point. We should ask ourselves, so what kind of a neighbor or a resident is Newport Academy likely to be on Reading Road and Congress Street? I've pointed out during the con process and in other venues, they seem to exhibit a lack of care and disregard for the safety of their patients and the neighbors. There's no fencing. There's no security that's 24-hour. I myself, who am across from the Congress Street property, have already incurred over $2,000 worth of damage because of their overly commercial footprint. They are plowing directly up onto my lawn, and they've dug up my entire lawn and some of my specimens. Just discovered and discussed that with them this past week. And so my question is, what did the town extract as part of this settlement process for very specific safety measures for Newport to put into place for these 2 exact facilities in our town as part of this settlement process? I think one of the attorneys had a nice turn of phrase. I think it was something like they'll try and have as few unapproved exits from the property as possible. That's commonly called runaways. It happens at Newport facilities in Connecticut and across the country. I have a very hardened front end. We all have permit carry at my house, and we will defend ourselves. But the town should take responsibility for the likely situation of people roaming in the dark on the streets in Greenfield Hill at night or trying to move across properties to escape. And I'm just curious again, what the town extracted in the settlement process for specific safety requirements that have teeth. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else? I don't see anyone on the chat. Is there anyone else on that would like to provide some comment to the Board of Selectmen? Okay, I see Arlene would like to speak. Arlene?
Yep.
Are you there?
I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Okay, sure,
Okay.
yes.
I think, Brenda, you sent out that comment. I got an email that you felt that some of the comments to you were a bit harsh. And I can understand that because people were really upset by this. Partly what they were upset about is we feel like we're reliving the landfill issue. It starts with incompetence on the point of an employee. That building permit never should have been approved. And then it's followed by lack of transparency. And suddenly we're left to confront the end result of the situation. We don't feel like we've been involved. We don't feel like we've been respected. I, along with a number of people here, have put 3 years and a lot of money into this. And I just get a note today that's kind of all over. And I don't see any reason to believe that this is the end of it, because I'm quite sure there will be other facilities that'll go in and use this as a footprint or a guidepost as to how to get around the zoning regulations. So it's very depressing to people. And that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. Is there anyone else who would like to make any comments that are on? Anyone at all? Oh, I see. Anthony Manila? Anthony? We can't hear you. Are you on mute? Anthony? I don't see you. Hold on. I'm looking. Can you double check your phone, because I can't hear you, or your computer. I don't see you on the board even. Are you calling in? Oh, his audio is not working. It said the town IT person who's running the meeting for us says your audio is not working. Is there an issue with your audio on your computer? Oh, I see. Oh. It's not there now. Oh, he's over here. Oh, I'm sorry, Anthony. Ugh. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to make a comment? I don't see anyone.
I'm on the phone, Brenda. I don't know if you can hear me. I'd love to make a comment if possible.
Sure. Is that Anthony?
This is Jonathan Fernandez at 450 Brett Road. I can
sure.
keep it brief.
No, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So I'm on the corner of Brett and Reading. I'm a Fairfield resident of 10 years. Wanted to say a few things. So first off, recognize the incredibly difficult position everybody's in. This is not a win for anybody, and I appreciate the ability to make a comment. Second thing I want to say is the thing that doesn't sit well with me, for better or worse, and I'll try to say this civilly as I can, is I love this town. I want to stay here. I recently replaced an 1840s barn on the property, and I had to jump through every hoop possible: wetlands, conservation, spending $15,000 in planning. Happy to do it because I love the town. I want to conserve it. And now down the street, I feel like private equity comes in and they go through none of the same checks and balances, none of the same public commentary. And I, as a taxpayer who love the town, want to contribute, want to be a good neighbor, am held to a much higher standard with respect to my property than these guys because of some loophole. I'm not a lawyer. My first comment is everyone's in a difficult situation, and I understand you got to balance the liability of the town. But this is going to send a signal to me. It's going to send a signal of what type of town we live in, whether I need to get involved in public, or whether I should pick up and sell my house to a private equity firm and move to Weston. So that's my comment.
All right, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Our next person is Barbara M. Barbara? Oh, I see you, but we can't hear you, Barbara. And Anthony, if you're still on, the town put up a number for you to call. Okay. All right, I can't hear you, Barbara. I don't know if you're on mute. Dial *6, Barbara, see if that works. But I think she's actually on the computer. Okay. Barbara, is that you? Oh, Anthony. Dave Kelly, Anthony's saying, can you unmute him? I guess he called, or do you have to dial *6, Anthony, to unmute? *6 on your phone. Anthony?
Just a moment, Brenda. He called in on the listening line, so I'll see if I can pass him through.
Oh, okay. Hold on, Anthony, because you're on the listen only line. You're not, I don't know how this works.
You can hear me now, I'm sure.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. So thank you for taking this meeting tonight. My only, my concern is obviously, voiced by everybody else that's been in this process for the past 2.5 years. But ultimately, clearly it sounds like this is going to get passed. And my ultimate concern is, are we going to have checks and balances for this group that's coming in? Are we going to be there often, making sure they're up to code? And how does that work? Because the second that they are out of line, we should be on top of them and forcing them to make sure that they are following the rules and regulations that are set forth by our town and by the state. And I'd love to say that I have the confidence that we can do that, but ultimately I'm honestly very, very concerned. And I'm sure I'm echoing some other residents around here that are in the same camp. But I would really hope that we really get through them with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that they're following the rules and regulations of ultimately what they're embarking upon. That's all.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate you making the effort to get through, even though you had to jump through some hoops.
Yep, all good.
Thank you. And Barbara, I'm just going to give you one more chance. Can you unmute yourself? No. Okay, so I just want to, before we go into executive session, I just want to reiterate what the town attorneys and our other attorneys have said. I do take a little bit of exception about the transparency issue. We have been extraordinarily transparent throughout this process. The town has put a tremendous amount of effort into arguing this case for 2 years. Our town attorneys have been in contact with the neighbors and neighborhood groups. I have taken calls, emails, but then we were hit with lawsuits, federal lawsuits, and they're serious lawsuits. And so when the town had to engage in mediation process or were commanded to come to court, and discuss this with a magistrate, we were unable to have any public discussion about that, either on the phone or anything like that. It's just not allowed. And I apologize for that, because I try to pride myself on being very transparent and open and honest about what is going on. And even if it's something that people disagree with, I want to always be open and honest. So we have done that. And when we weren't allowed to discuss the case, we weren't allowed to. I don't see anyone else who wants to make any more comments. What's going to happen is we're going to vote to go into executive session, which means everyone will be off the call, but they can come, I guess, back on. Is that how we usually do it?
Yes.
Yes, I'll move to the lobby, and then when you're ready to come back out, we'll bring them back into the meeting if they want to stay connected.
Right, so they could stay on, Dave, Kelly, or?
That's correct. They can stay on, but they won't hear anything until you are ready to come back.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I hope everyone heard that. So what is going to happen is we're going to vote to go into executive session. We're going to discuss this matter with our attorneys. We will come back out into public session and make our vote in public session. So those of you who would like to stay on, please feel free to do that. And then that's it. And obviously any discussions after the fact can be had once the attorneys allow any one of us to have discussions with any member of the public. We will absolutely do that. And so I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Dave, you'll take care of that?
Yes, we have a large number of guests tonight, so it's just going to take me a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Muted. The recording has started.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so I'm going to ask for a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I'm going to ask for a motion to accept and approve the settlement as discussed in executive session with our town's litigation team with the suit with Monroe R LLC versus the town of Fairfield.
I'll make the motion.
Second it. And
so I'm going to open it up for discussion of the board before we vote.
Madam First Selectwoman, just to note that there was no action taken in private executive.
Yes, there was. I'm sorry, I should have noted that. No votes were taken in executive session. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to open up to the board. Any comments before we vote?
Ladies first.
Nance?
Sure. I want to start by saying that this was one of the hardest days ultimately that I've had since being elected to this office. Yes, some of the comments were aggressive, a couple bordered on hateful, but most of the commentary we heard and have heard over these last many years have been constructive and not just from an emotional place, but people asking really great questions. And I think the three of us, if I may, and ultimately we were unanimous in where we landed, but we are your representative voice at the table. And while we often express those differences of opinion, we were united here. And I take it very, very seriously. And I wanted to share very briefly how I personally came to my decision today. I listened to the comments and over these years. I educated myself on fair housing laws, and I learned about the hierarchy of laws from the federal level down to the state to the town. And while some zoning laws do fall in our purview, they cannot violate state or federal laws, which means we don't have unfettered access. And I learned about that. I want to talk about the issue of transparency because many of you will recall that I was on the RTM at the time that this issue first came up, and had a meeting at the church, which was, again, very, it was difficult, but I heard you, and we, again, continued to hear you over these many years. And I have been transparent on this issue to the extent that the law has allowed. We are well aware that there was a lawsuit, and that changes how we can be communicative and what we can share. There were so many times where people would call me and ask me, and I'm like, I wish I can't, so our hands are had been tied by a very serious federal lawsuit. But ultimately, after asking hours of probing questions, and we spent many hours discussing where we are going to land, and through the lessons learned from historic precedent, from the actions of what surrounded this case and the facts of the case themselves, and on the advice of the magistrate judge on counsel, both the town attorney and our outside counsel representing the best interests of Fairfield, I am coming to the conclusion that I am. And so I just wanted to share some of that and look forward to hearing from community members as we move forward.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank
Tom?
you.
Yeah, I'll go next. Nancy, very well said. Thank you. When I've approached this case, this situation, that first I was on the Board of Finance, and then it came to us on the Board of Selectmen, and the attorneys will know that this is how I was. I've kept on asking, have we done all we can do? Have we done all we can do? And the reality is, in good conscience, given the advice of counsel and giving the significant exposure to cost as compared to our probability of success in this matter, we were dealt a very bad hand through a number of years and a number of things, both legal and otherwise. And we fought as much as we can given a probability of success in this. And it pains me. There's good points raised all along. And I think we do need to be diligent as a government moving forward and make sure that we're buttoned up and that we do the right things and follow the right processes. I do not share the concern that we're breaking the process here based on my discussions with the attorneys, and as Nancy said, they've been for hours. That process wasn't followed previously, and if we went to follow it now, or tried to follow it even more diligently now, it just lends more credence to the other side. So painfully, I've reached my conclusion. of what I think is in the best interest of the town.
Thank you, Tom. So I would just say that I know this is an emotional issue, that we've been working on this with our community for a number of years. And I would again say that the town has tried very hard to advocate on behalf of our residents for as long as I've been in this office. And I again want to mention the transparency issue because it does matter to me that our residents know that we are transparent and honest and full disclosure, except when we're in the middle of a federal lawsuit and you cannot talk about it. So that is how you're supposed to behave as an elected official. I'm not just a citizen, but I am the leader of the town. And it would be highly unethical for me to speak outside of the purview. And I know that's frustrating to some residents, but again, as the both selectmen mentioned, we spoke about this numerous times. The town has tried to defend this for over 2 years, spent a considerable amount of money, and have listened to residents. And we get it. We completely understand. But again, our attorneys have advised us, and they've showed us very good information that shows our town is making the right decision in this matter. And so I do want to say, before we take the vote, I am going to work to set up a town hall style meeting for residents who did email in, where we can have an opportunity to do just like this and just speak in more detail after the terms of the settlement have been signed off by both sides. And then we'll have that opportunity, and we'll also have opportunity for smaller meetings as well. And again, once those terms are signed off on, I'm happy to discuss anything over the phone if people can't make a meeting, to the extent that I can. And then hopefully we will set up, and Nancy and Tom would like to also be involved in that, as well as whatever our town attorneys can make that. So that is my final comment, and I will ask, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously. And I just want to mention that I will email the residents who did email us with that meeting information when we're going to do that, so that people you can ask more detailed questions, and we'll be able to give more detailed answers on the settlement agreement and also about additional information. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I apologize.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.